call our meeting to order. And I so appreciate this. The best part of the meeting is at the beginning when we pray. So I appreciate it. And this evening we have Craig Hansen here, pastor of Valley Springs Assembly of God. And I so appreciate Craig because he leads prayer every Tuesday for our city. And thank you for doing that and all the people that come. Really appreciate it. So let's stand and open in prayer.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you, council, and Merry Christmas to you all. Before we pray, I have one short scripture I want to read because I think it's appropriate for this time of year. Matthew 1:21, it says this, "And Mary the virgin shall bring forth a son, and you will call his name Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." And I believe that is so appropriate for our society today. I think we're all sinners at one point, and God is the one that wants to save us from those things. And we hope our country gets that message as well. So let's pray. Dear Lord Jesus, I thank you. I thank you for your goodness. I thank you that, God, through Jesus Christ, we have peace in life. And Lord, I pray that you will bless this meeting. You will bless each person who is going to speak, who is going to present their points, their case, their information, dear Lord God, to this council. And I pray that this council, Lord God, will be able to make wise and godly decisions based on the facts and the information that is presented for them. I thank you for their leadership in our community, and I thank you that they truly seek to make Nampa City a blessed place to live. And God, we give you the glory for it. We give you the praise, and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Let's pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you.
And before we do roll call, we had a couple birthdays in, so yesterday was Sandy Levi's birthday, so happy birthday. And then was it it was after our last council meeting, Victor had a birthday, or was it before our last council meeting? Afterwards, so we've had 2 birthdays. Yes. Oh, good grief. Todd, how did I do that? Oh, my goodness. So this was kind of birthday month.
We better sing.
Thank you, Jean. Let's do it. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear
Everyone.
Todd, Sandy, and Victor. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. You better have some more.
Don't say that, please.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're ready for roll call.
Rodriguez?
Wow.
I'm not telling, by the way.
Todd?
I'm not 72.
Quiet, yeah. Okay, back to roll call. Here, yeah.
Bruner? Here. Hachi?
Here.
Bauer?
Here.
Haverfield?
Here.
And Levi?
Present?
One more time, guys.
That was great timing. Oh, my goodness. Ron, was that you? No. Oh, it wasn't you. It's good. I'm glad I asked. That was funny. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is proposed amendments to the agenda and approval of the consent agenda. And we do have one item, and that's just in case anyone is here for item 6.4 on the agenda. It will be postponed till 1/18/21. But when we get to the public hearing section, we will have a motion and a vote to move that item to the 18th. So beyond that, I'm not aware of any proposed amendments. Is there anyone else? Okay, stand for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez? Bruner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Hachi?
Yes.
And Haverfield?
Yes.
So the next item on the agenda are proclamations, and we do not have any proclamations tonight. And then we'll move to residents wishing to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item. And do we have anyone signed up? We have a few
We
people, it
do. We
looks
have
like.
5. Let's start
Okay,
with-
are some of those for the public hearing, or are they not, they're agenda items but no public hearing?
They're for the Lake Lowell project.
Okay. Now, Lake Lowell,
It's 510.
and let me, hang on just a second. Okay. Okay, and I guess Tom is not here this evening, and, okay. Daniel, you're presenting on that item. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. And so as Nate calls the names of those wishing to speak this evening, it's a 3-minute opportunity. We won't necessarily provide response, but thank you for being here and using your voice. And so we'll get started.
Joanna Bell.
Good evening, Joanna.
Thank you very much for the opportunity in my 3 minutes, and happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you.
I'm speaking out for the homeless in Nampa on the turning away from the poor and downtrodden and the words that they say which we won't understand. Don't accept that what's happening is just a case of others suffering, or you'll find that you're joining in the turning away. It's a sin that somehow light is changing to shadows and casting its shroud over all we have known, unaware how the ranks have grown, driven on by a heart of stone. We could find that we're all alone in the dream of the proud. On the wings of the night, as the daytime is stirring, where the speechless unite in a silent accord, using words that you'll find are strange and mesmerized as they light the flame. Feel the new wind of change on the wings of the night. No more turning away from the weak and the weary. No more turning away from the coldness inside. Just a world that we all must share. It's not enough to just stand and stare. Is it only a dream that there'll be no more turning away? Hey, you, don't help them to bury the light. Hey, you, could you help me to carry the stone? Open your heart. I'm coming home. It was only a fantasy. The wall was too high, as you can see. No matter how he tried, he could not break free. And the old man died, and the worms ate into his brain. Hey, you, out there on the road, always doing what you're told, can you help me? Hey, you, out there beyond the wall, breaking bottles in the hall, can you help me? Don't tell me there's no hope at all. Together we stand, divided we fall. We fall, we fall, we fall. Bless the Lord, O my soul, for his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for his mercy endures forever. Praise the Lord, for it's good, and its mercy endures forever. Thank you.
Thank you. And you know, I forgot to ask, so we typically share our address. I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you have an address that you would call home?
I did put an address on the card.
Oh, you did? You've got it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy holidays. You too. Okay, and the next person is?
Harold Haley.
And is this on an agenda or non-agenda item?
On an agenda.
And what agenda item are, this is the Lake Lowell?
Lake Lowell.
Okay. Good evening, and go ahead and
Hi.
restate your name and address.
My name is Harold Haley, and I live at 647 Lake Lowell Avenue. All I wanted to say was I wanted to thank Daniel Badger for coming out and explaining what they've they've changed their ideas on our project, and he's probably used to getting more jabs than compliments, but I just wanted to thank him for coming out and explaining and the hard work they've done to change our project to make it a little more suitable for everybody. So that was what I wanted to say. Thank
Can I
you.
say thank you? So oftentimes, we just hear the negative.
Right.
Thank you for taking time to share positive. I really
Okay.
appreciate that.
Thank
Thank you.
Cheryl Fredrickson.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Frederickson. I live next door to Harold. I'm 701 Lake Lowell, and we've got all the same concern about losing so much of the front of our yards. And I too wanted to thank Dan Badger. He came to each one of us separately and spent time and explained and just walked off. And it was really such a relief to see that they were willing to compromise and go with a different plan. This has been a nightmare and so scary for most of us. And to see that the city was willing to go with something different. And we just want to thank whoever we can thank to be willing to do that, because this has really been such a nightmare for us. And Dan was wonderful. And just like Harold, I was here to do the same thing. And so thank you.
Cheryl, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to come. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Kirk Galley?
And is this an agenda? Is it also the same? Okay.
Hi, I'm Kurt Gailey, and it's 729 Lake Lowell Avenue. I have not had the pleasure of meeting Daniel Badger. I really don't know what we have agreed to. I would like to know what this has happened. I mean, we have gone from 19 feet of our front yard to, it sounds like the city of Nampa has a 8-foot easement that has not been used yet. So it sounds to me like option 2 is gonna use up the 8 feet plus 2 more feet, and then another 5-foot easement. But then you kind of thumb through here and see the proposed property line that goes through there, and it does not reflect that. A lot of the problem I'm having is I did this 20 years ago and said, you know, can we widen the road the other direction before you put that subdivision in it, and it doesn't affect us? And I was basically told, we've had an engineer look at it. You will be fine. Don't worry about it. Here I am 20 years later. I've lived there at 729 Lake Lowell for 30 years. I have a couple 100-year-old trees that the city of, or that Idaho Power has already told me that they're gonna cut down so they can move their power lines. I've had those trees appraised and didn't think anybody was gonna really believe the first appraisal, so I had a second appraisal done. Let me tell you right now, you don't like the first price or appraisal, you're not gonna like the second one. Still, I don't know what we've agreed to. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Daniel Badger. I have got nothing but talking in circles from Paragon Consulting, and just have not gotten a straight answer, not once. So
I will tell you something, that if possible, we will move, because you guys are here for that item, if possible, we will move 510 on the agenda up, so it's before public hearings. So we'll do our best to do that so that you can be here to hear. Otherwise, it's after public hearings, and we don't want that to happen. So we'll try to hurry so that we can get to it before we go into public hearings.
Okay.
Because that'll be important for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
For coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Kevin Goodman?
It's all the same.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I live right next door to him. Same thing. I met Daniel, great guy. Gave me information, told me about the meeting change from the 6th to 20th, but didn't give us a time. I was under the impression it was like 6 o'clock or something. But I was reading Op 2, and that's what I was trying to figure out. And Daniel wasn't very clear when I did talk to him. So I have 4 items on this. The bike lanes, yay or nay on this Op 2 proposal that he sent to us. And then, so the way this read, let me put these dogs on. It says Okay, the property acquisition on the south side of Lake Lowell Avenue for option is 2 feet of public right-of-way and 5 feet of permanent easement. Now, is that the back of the sidewalk, another 5 feet, or is that just the already right-of-way? And then, because it says, further on if you read, it says, permanent easement, roadway improvements in this option include the curb, gutter, and, where'd it go? Utilities and slopes in the easement. So I'm assuming that's only the 7 feet or whatever.
So I'll tell you what, Daniel will make notes. And so he'll be writing notes, and when he comes forward on this item, we'll address those. So
Okay.
he'll take notes right now,
Yeah,
but keep going, because I think you said you had 4 items.
Yeah, well, and that was what I was, 2 of those were in one, the bike lanes, year or the optional, are you acquiring the easement, the other 5 feet behind that? Or is it just, that's where the, and then I wanted to know, is it gonna be a rolling curb or a standard driveway entrance? Because my mom owns a house on the other side, 812 Lake Lowell, and they put rolling curbs in. And you wanna talk about nasty to get out with that hill. You have to roll and drop the front of your car, and if you put a bike lane there, that's where they're gonna be parked. Because you wait till you can see to get out. And so I was just curious about that. And then do the homeowners all the way down Lake Lowell from Augustus, down there I have friends that live right down the street, know they're gonna lose their parking? Have they been notified? Because the 2 I've talked to haven't even got a email or anything from the city to say, no parking. When this, as I read it, as this project gets underway, then all of a sudden, they don't have their street parking anymore for guests and stuff.
So
When they're
Daniel,
drivers.
he'll address that one too.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Did you get them all?
That was it?
No, that was it? Okay, Daniel, did you get it all? Okay, good. So when we get ready to step in, you can address those issues. Thank you so much. Okay, and next? Is there anyone else that had intended to testify during this time? Okay, seeing none, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is agency reports. We do not have any, but we do have staff communication from Darren.
Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and Council. A couple items to talk about with our Recreation Center, the Harvard Recreation Center. Recently, we just promoted John to the Recreation Manager. Courtney left to take a career change, and so I know many people already know John, but I wanted to introduce him and let him know and express that we really appreciate him, and he'll do just a great job in the position, so.
That's great. Congratulations, John. Can John come forward and just
Yes.
at least say, give us a comment? Sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We appreciate it. Yeah, I just look forward to the opportunity. I've been with the city for nearly 20 years, and I've passionate in recreation and really been a home there at the rec center. So I'm excited to be able to take the helm. I've been out the last few years working in recreation outdoors, and so it's nice to be able to come back into the building and take over there. And I look forward to moving forward and growing what we have going there. And thanks for all the support we get from this body. We appreciate it. So,
And remind me, how many years were you the night supervisor?
for 11 years, I was the evening supervisor there at the rec center. So I did that, and then I've spent the last 7 or 8 years as the recreation manager, taking care of sports programs and that in the parks and in the schools and that. So, yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah, thank
We're
you.
excited for this opportunity, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, and it's just really great. John, he was actually a custodian before that and worked his way through college and decided that, hey, he wanted to take a full time and stay in the recreation. And so it's just really great to see John grow, and he'll do just such a great job. The second item that I'd like to talk about is an item that has come to your attention. Every once in a while, council will get an email, and it's about how the recreation center works with insurance companies. And so many insurance companies they'll have a health and fitness component to their insurance plan. Especially it may be like Medicare, some kind of supplemental insurance. And so we work with some insurance companies, and how that works is there's basically two models. One model is an insurance company, someone will buy a gym membership, and the insurance company will do a reimbursement to that individual. So for example, their plan may say, we'll reimburse $250 per year per person, and then the customer simply gets a receipt from any gym that they would like. And of course, we're just dealing with the recreation center, and they'll show the receipt and then get that reimbursement up to that amount, $250. So if it costs $350, of course, they would still only get the $250, the maximum that is allowed. The second model is insurance companies seek to get a contractual agreement with certain fitness organizations. And with that agreement, it's typically they will ask the gym or the fitness center or the facility to track visits from each customer, and then they'll reimburse per visit for the customer or whatever the agreement was. So one of the things that we've looked into that sounded like just a really great opportunity to work with a variety of insurance companies, but when we overlap that with our current usage, we see that it's a decline in revenue working out that particular way with those agreements. And so in addition to that, the benefit or the challenge of working with a contract is trying to treat all insurance companies fair and offer them the same amount. And I don't know if it would be a good policy for the city to expect to get full compensation for our memberships from some insurance companies, but then just a fraction of the cost just to work with other companies that just want to do a contractual agreement with us. I think the other thing is to be cautious about is, so just some history. We have about, NAMPA is made up of about 13-14% of people that are 65 and over. We have about 20-something% of senior population right now. And so we have over 3,000 members that are 65 and older. If we worked out an agreement where, with an insurance company where perhaps they got it free and the insurance company billed us into some kind of contract, if we renegotiated it at a certain time, it could put the city in a really tough position, because if we were not able to come to a renegotiate after like a 2-year period, it would leave like 1,000 people or how many ever went with that particular insurance company. It would leave them in a situation where they wouldn't know where their membership stood. And so I've worked hard over the 15 years that they've had these type of programs, trying to come to some kind of agreement. But with the contractual ones, I have never been able to come to that agreement. Certainly, every insurance company has the ability to let the patron pay us, and they can reimburse just like the other insurance companies. They have that ability to do that, but it's just not in some of their models. And we've even went so far to say that we'll count, we'll take attendance for you, although it is an expense to us, but still the patron has to buy a membership, and then you reimburse according to your plan on the number of visits that person took. So I know that some of you have got, over the years, have got requests or wanted to know what our policy was and why we do certain things, and that is kind of where we're standing on the policy. And we only plan on, at this point, unless we get different direction from city and council, city council, is to stick with the reimbursement plan as we have been doing.
Are there any questions for Darren on that? We just wanted to make sure that council was aware, because every once in a while questions come up, and that way at least you guys have a little bit of information. So, Darren, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready to move into new business, and our first action item is 5.1 on the agenda, and this is to approve the appointment and authorize the mayor to sign the resolution to appoint Greg Hathaway to the Building Fire Code Advisory and Appeals Board for a 2-year term, beginning on 1/7/22. Are there any?
I'll turn my volume on. I'll make the motion to approve the nomination.
Thank you. Second. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Werner,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Machi,
Yes.
and Haverfield.
Yes.
And Rick, I realize I don't know Greg. Is he here this evening? Hi, Greg. I wondered if that was you, the one person I didn't know out there. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here this evening. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item 5.2 on the agenda, and this is an action item to authorize the use of the Republic Services rebate funds for the purchase of seasonal decor elements for expanding our traditional holiday events downtown, and it's actually for lighting downtown. And Matt, thank you for being here this evening. I think you all had a copy of Matt's letter in the packet. What was not in the packet was a couple of things. I wanted council to know that the Republic Services rebate is from an alternative fuel tax credit that we receive as a city. Last time, we actually applied that to the Nampa Shares program, which helped offset utility billing for seniors. So right now, with our ARPA dollars, we have the opportunity to apply ARPA dollars to actually do several years worth of funding for our seniors to help offset utility bill increases. What we don't have is any opportunity to fund some of the revitalization of our downtown. And it's one of the things that a lot of citizens are commenting on, and they're asking, what can we do to help our downtown move forward? And so in visiting with our BID, I appreciate the fact that they sent us a letter requesting the use of those funds. And actually, because we have another source to fund our Nampa Shares program, I think it's a good idea that somehow we kind of jumpstart our downtown. I hear so many comments about Caldwell and the beautiful lights that they have, and I think it's time that the city of Nampa have a focus and some seed money to actually create a festive environment for our downtown. And we do have some ideas, and they're not fleshed out fully, but anyway, so the request is the current fund that's coming in this year that we have available is $62,107.98 to be exact. So that's the dollar amount that we currently have. And so the recommendation is to allow downtown to use that to help. It won't fund a portion, it'll only fund a portion of it. It will not fund all of it, but it's a beginning. So that's the request.
Mayor, just question, so I know, I can't imagine the number of labor hours Caldwell puts in. So have we figured in as far as the cost for future cost too, for labor hours, for whatever the lighting plan would be?
No, we have not. But one plan, and again, we need to come back with a recommendation, but in attending the Main Street program a few years ago, there's actually a lighting product that you line all of the tops of the buildings and they stay up year-round.
They stay up all the time.
Yep. And if a set goes out, you can just pull that one little section out and replace it. It's very easy.
That would be efficient. I mean, I don't know how Caldwell does it, but I don't think that's the case. They don't leave their lights up. They take them down all the time, right?
They
Okay.
don't. Yeah. So that would be the beginning of funding something like that.
Yeah, if that was that efficiency like that, yeah. I just know there's always expense with labor, so that's why I was asking. Thanks.
And Mayor, I asked when we talked before if we would be reaching out to the private businesses, if they would participate as well. This is obviously for the city-owned buildings, but then trying to partner with the private side too. So who will be moving forward with that effort? Will it be the downtown BID?
It may be the BID, it may be Main Street working together, and so it'll be a joint effort. I see Matt shaking his head there. So, and I think that it's good to have some buy-in from downtown, and then we may ask for some buy-in from NDC and the city, and it's a partnership that we all work together. We're going to be needing sponsors for the Downtown Light overall plan, because I'm excited about it. I think that we can have an amazing downtown, but it will require sponsorship from corporate sponsors to come in. But it'll involve a light show that goes from the train depot all the way to Lloyd Center, and we can involve the Warhawk Air Museum, the trains. Our caboose could be lit. They do a wonderful Polar Express thing that the historic train depot does, and they light the train depot beautifully with white lights. And so there's so much potential, but we need to begin. And it's time, and the reason it's coming forward now is that we need to catch the lights on sale, anticipating the sale ends right after Christmas, right? So we want to be able to catch that and know that the funds are available.
Mayor, I'm going to take a shot and say so moved.
Yeah, I'll second the motion, and I'll also state that I found, we went to a funeral last weekend down in Fallon, Nevada, of all places. Never would have expected myself to be there during a Christmas season, but they had downtown lit up, and they had obviously no open creek as far as going through downtown, but the lights, the presentation of the tree in the center, it was quite nice. And so I hope that we can get to that point and satisfy those that have been of concern that we're not trying to keep up with Caldwell.
Thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there additional discussion?
Mary Kling,
Yes.
I did a survey through our community about their lights and their Christmas festive holidays. And of course, everybody goes to Caldwell, and I don't blame them. That's beautiful over there. But yeah, I think it's time, and I fully support this in 100% because they support it. Yes.
I am so thrilled with our downtown efforts with, I think, Matt, you're our current chair of the BID, with the BID, the Main Street Board, and I just want to say, just wait, because we're going to get it done. I'm going to help these guys. We need some sponsors, but I think we can get the sponsors for next year, and I think we can have an exciting downtown. So I'm pretty excited about where we're going. So besides the Main Street meeting that we just held, with Ed McMahon coming in and Kevin Daniels, and it was just good. So I think we have so much potential. So, okay, roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Brunner,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
and Mucci.
Yes.
Awesome. And now you can go home. So we have three things I want to get done before 6:30. I think the first thing we can do it in whatever order. I want to get through 510, but I also want to get through 5, 7, 8, and 9. Those are the fire district MOUs. And then the last item I'd like to get through, if we can, is action item 613, which is the opportunity funds, before we step into public hearings. But let's start with 510, knowing that we do have a couple more items before 6:30. And Matt Turner, I don't know if we need to get through the Aclara One software upgrade, if there's someone here for that this evening.
Yes, Mayor, I am here.
Okay, so we will try to get through that before we step into public hearings also. Okay. So this is item 510. This is an action item. This is the Lake Lowell rebuild project. Daniel Badger, thank you for providing the information, and we have one of three options, right, that we would be voting on this evening.
So, Mayor, Council, the Lake Lowell rebuild project began back in 2019 for design work. Public outreach began in 2019 in October. Since then, we've had some open houses and neighborhood meetings throughout 2020 and 2021. And since the last council meeting, I have met with those members, citizens that were at the meeting last time in, I believe, November, and discussed the options with them. As you heard, we've been able to resolve concerns for some people. Some people still have some concerns, and I'll address those as we go through the various options. So the current existing roadway out there We have right-of-way widths between 50 feet and 80 feet, just depending on where we're at and what type of development has happened adjacent to those areas. It's a 3-lane facility with 12 to 14-foot east and westbound lanes and a 14-foot center turn lane. There are between 5 to 9-foot sidewalks along the north side of the road, depending on where you're at, and there's between 5 and 8-foot sidewalks intermittently on the south side of the road. There are also existing 5-foot bike lanes that were installed in 2007 with the roadway improvements for a grant project we had in front of the high school there. And so there's a couple of pictures of kind of what those look like out there. The original redesign option went with a 80-foot right-of-way, which is which would be our typical on this type of a roadway. 3 lanes still, had 5-foot sidewalk along the north side, 8-foot sidewalk on the south side per our current standards. With 5-foot bike lanes, there was needed 15 feet of right-of-way on the south side and made the closest home 10 feet from the back of the right-of-way. We heard significant concerns over that design. And so we went back and looked at a couple of different options. We've got 3. The first option would have a 70-foot total right-of-way, 30 feet on the south of the section line. That would have 3 or 11-foot lanes, east-west, a 12-foot center turn lane, 5-foot sidewalk along the north side, 8-foot sidewalk along the south side, 4-foot bike lanes. Would need a 5-foot right-of-way acquisition. The existing right-of-way on the south side, there's a 25-foot prescriptive right-of-way that we have already. Most of the properties along there encroach into that right-of-way with their improvements about 5 feet, and we would be looking at a 2-foot or a 5-foot acquisition under this scenario. And that puts the closest home 20 feet from the right-of-way line where the back of sidewalk would be. That's compliant with our city setbacks. And so as we looked at that and heard the concerns over the 8-foot sidewalk, we looked at what it would look like if we were to drop that down to a 5-foot sidewalk along the south side. And that drops our right-of-way need down to 27 feet on the south side. So just 2 feet additional beyond what the existing prescriptive right-of-way is. And the sidewalk would be within that 27 feet, basically right at the back of the sidewalk would be where the right-of-way line is. There would be a 5-foot easement beyond that that would be used to tie back in the slope from the back of sidewalk grade back into the existing homes, as well as allow for a place for the power company to put their poles. Within this design, we have this 3 lanes, the 11-foot east-west, 12-foot center, 5-foot sidewalk on the north side, 5-foot sidewalk on the south side, 4-foot bike lanes to match up with the existing ones that were installed previously. The right-of-way needs are that 2 feet of public right-of-way and then a 5-foot easement that they would still own, but we would purchase within our negotiations to allow for the tie-in and the power. The closest home would be 23 feet from the back of the sidewalk. And let's see, so generally speaking, you can see kind of where that sits. The red line there would be where the back of the sidewalk would sit. So generally about 7 feet from the existing fog line is where we're looking at. Yep.
Excuse me, I turned my mic off. Is it back on now? Okay. So can you go back to that? Because I want to pause and make sure that we're seeing this. So the change, if we use this as an example, the current environment where the side of that road is, my understanding is there's an easement there, but it's never been utilized. So their yard goes out to that.
Correct. Generally speaking, most of the properties along there have about a 5-foot encroachment into the public right-of-way, the prescriptive right-of-way for Lake Lowell Avenue that is established by state code.
And the interesting thing, so like you know this, but the average citizen has no idea what you're talking about.
Yes,
I hate to say
understand.
it that way because I wouldn't.
Nope.
You know, unless you work in this, you wouldn't understand what that means.
Correct.
So maybe you could say that again so that
So-
it's in terms that they can understand. But then also let's then look at that picture that you were on a minute ago that's a close-up. And then let's talk about, it looks like it will appear like it's gone in how many feet?
So it's approximately 7 feet into is where the back of the sidewalk will be. It's a new 2 feet of acquisition, and we will be negotiating with the property owners along there for acquisition of that 2 feet as well as the easement. The right-of-way acquisition process, we will be, we pay fair market value, negotiate from there. That includes negotiation for impacts to landscaping and that. So what we would be, if there is landscaping that we are impacting that is not within the existing public right-of-way, we would be compensating for that or mitigating that with improvements that we're putting in. And those types of things, discussion of the trees, and those are all things that would happen in the right-of-way acquisition portion. That's not something that we necessarily have specifics on tonight, but as we would have Scott Johnson, our right-of-way negotiator, he would be working with the property owners to negotiate the purchase of that right-of-way.
So then, just another quick comment on this is that there is no funding for this project at this time. So it is the years that you would project this out, so like right-of-way acquisition.
We have funding, there's some funding for right-of-way acquisition. There's not funding for construction currently. This is certainly a project we would be looking at some of the ARPA funds or the new infrastructure funds from the federal government that are coming out, that would likely be our funding mechanism for this project. We're currently in evaluations on all of those various funding options and where we would be placing that, but this certainly falls within one of those that we would be looking at funding
And
for.
currently, do you even have a date on the calendar?
For construction
Yeah, I
or,
mean, when we have it, sometimes we have things, even if they're not funded, we have them projected out to 2029 or whatever,
so this would be a maintenance project, not one of our impact fee, capacity
Okay, so it's
projects.
not on.
And so it's not in there. If we were following our asset management plan and road rebuilds based on the funding there, this project would have ideally already been under construction. And so it will be placed in at the earliest available funding opportunity that we have.
Mayor, as usual, clarification that I always ask for. So the most encroachment, I'll just use that word, counting the easement on anyone's property on the south side would be 7 feet. Is that what I'm hearing?
That would not include the easement. The easement would be beyond that, and that would just be to transition back to the existing grade, whether up or down is
So we're
necessary.
talking about 12 feet then?
So we would be talking about 12 feet. 7 feet would have the improvements to the back of the sidewalk. The other would just be yard still with power poles.
Okay, and with that 12 feet then, did I also hear that the closest to the sidewalk would be 23 feet front yard space to the front door? Is that what I'm?
From the front of the home, from the front of the closest home to the back of the proposed sidewalk would be 23 feet.
So if my math is correct then, is currently some of those places or a place or two would have 35 feet and would be taking 12 feet more from them.
So the measurement from the front of the house to the sidewalk is that 7 feet. The easement, there's no.
Like I said, no one knows about these easements.
Well, and so when we talk about the easement will not look like anything other than yard with a power pole in it. And so there will be no improvements, no roadway improvements within that 5 feet, other than some sloped and regrassed areas.
Okay, so it'll still be grassed area, but it could have a power pole sticking up.
Could have a power pole in it, yes.
So is it possible to go underground power along that whole, I know it's very expensive, but,
The cost of going underground power, currently, the citizens of Nampa would not have to pay for the relocation of that power because they are in our right-of-way. If we were to go underground with that power, the citizens would bear that cost, and that cost is significant. So, and if we were to go underground power, we would need a wider than 10 foot or a wider than 5 foot easement to place that. we would likely need a 10-foot easement for them to go underground power with that.
Mayor, and just if I can move to just a financial subject then, as far as the reason we're having to do this bike path and so on, I take it is federal funding.
So there are, when we use federal funds, there are requirements for bike and pedestrian improvements in there. In this particular situation, the bike lanes, they would serve obviously as bike lanes. One of the other things that they do is they provide additional buffer for the pedestrians. Typically on this type of a roadway, we would like, our current standards and current safe pedestrian practices would call for a detached sidewalk along this classification of a roadway to provide additional buffer from the pedestrians to the vehicle travels. The bike lane serves a dual purpose in this instance, providing some of that buffer as well as a place for the bicycles to go.
My question is financial. Do we get federal funding if we do not put the bike lanes in?
It is unlikely we would be able to use federal funding for the project if we did not have
And
the
if we
appropriate.
choose one of these options, what's the percentage of federal funding compared to what the city is going to have to contribute?
If we're federal funding, our formula is 7.3 something cents on the dollar. If we are not
So
compliant,
92% federal funding or 92.5 or whatever is what I'm hearing.
correct. So
And I'm sorry, Daniel, I know you know this, so Jeff, you're out there, so so this is your understanding too, is if without bike lanes, our percentage of chance of getting this federal funding is minimal? Is that your understanding also? Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. You've answered
Yep.
a lot of questions along the way. Thank you.
So-
So we'll let you finish.
So in answering the questions about whether bike lanes are included, bike lanes are, a 4-foot bike lane on each side is included in this option that we are recommending. Let me look at my other, okay. Oh, come on. In the easement would just be the slope and the power poles. The parking, that is looking through, I was trying to leaf through all of our public stuff that we've done on this one. I didn't see anything jump out specifically on the parking to me, so I don't have a definitive answer on that particular section. I know that the majority of the focus on the public outreach has been on this area between Augusta and State Street, where there are no improvements on the south side of the roadway.
So Mayor, just to follow up there too, because we did hear during the 3-minute public discussion that those folks, at least to his understanding, were not even aware that this was happening in any discussion as far as the parking. I realize the parking there, again, is not something that was just a right, but it's something that's been used, so it's a common practice. So what has been the communication?
So I did not find anything specific to parking on that. Generally speaking, a roadway of this classification would not have parking along it. The combination of the driveways and on-street parking typically would reduce the safety of the corridor just from a sight distance problem with cars parking on the roadway and then also cars entering the roadway from multiple driveways along there. But as for, I didn't see anything specific to the parking outreach in there as I was just glancing
So
through it.
Mayor, bottom line is, these folks would lose their parking if this happens.
They will lose parking
Even though it's
on
not
the
their
street.
rightful parking, they would use what they're used to.
Mayor, Councilman Brunner, yes, that
Do we have any,
would.
you probably don't have any idea then how many homes or how many this would affect?
There are approximately, probably between there, about 15 between State Street and Augusta, and then there's probably another 15-ish back to Canyon Street. Yes.
So Daniel, for sake of time, we'll let you go ahead and finish
Okay.
your presentation.
The third option we looked at not doing sidewalk on the south side of the road. No improvements to the bike and pedestrian safety. This option would likely not qualify us for federal funding. And as well, the closest home stays at 30 feet, basically from the property. The other question was what type of curb and gutter will be installed there. This will be a vertical curb and gutter. Rolled curb and gutter was a standard from a previous public works director who felt that it was better to allow the bikes someplace to hop off the road if a car came. The unfortunate thing is that also allows a car to hop off as well, and so that's not a standard that we have today. And so it would be a vertical curb and gutter there. And so our recommended option for the redesign would be to have the 5-foot sidewalk on the south, a 2-foot right-of-way acquisition, 5-foot easement, the landscaping concerns and those type of things. Those will all be dealt with by our right-of-way negotiator for whatever option you choose. If right-of-way acquisition is necessary, that's the process that goes through.
Yes.
May I ask a few questions, please, Daniel? So a few follow-up as well as things that were mentioned before in the public comment. This gentleman referred to the tree appraisal. Do we have any idea what those tree appraisals are and who bears that expense?
So that is something that would be specific property by property, depending on the impacts that the project has on the trees. We generally are appraisers that we work with. They have that technical expertise to appraise those trees. We also tend to work with our city forester when we get into questions of, okay, what kind of impacts will this project have on that tree? Is that a tree that has to come out, or is there other things that can be done to still have a viable tree there? Those are all things that we look at as we do those right-of-way acquisitions. And so
the expense would fall on the city if we have to do something with the gentleman's 100-year-old trees.
If we are impacting trees that are on private property, that is generally the case that we would be compensating for that.
Another question is there are proposed bike lanes, but cars are going to be backing in and out of driveways. Is that a safety issue?
Ideally, an arterial roadway would not have any single-family residential connections to it, driveways. Obviously, that's not something that we're able to do when we're going into these older areas of town. That's why when you drive out on, Middleton Road, you see the residential subdivisions that have gone in there. They all come out to internal streets, and that it's not as safe as if they weren't there, but it's not a safety concern enough that it would preclude them going there.
Okay, and a follow-up on that, and I apologize, I'm going to have to ask this question. What is the necessity of this project?
The roadway pavement condition out there is, I want to say it's not failed at this point, but it's beyond where we can continue to maintain it just by using chip seals. It's fell to a level that it needs to be rebuilt.
And so we're taking a proactive step as far as if we're going to repave it, we want to make sure it's widened or whatever for flow of traffic in the future. But it's not tied to the pathway that we have to do these improvements as far as the bike route or bike lane or anything.
The bike lanes are that are part of our adopted bike and pedestrian master plan. They are not specific to the Wilson path that's there. It does provide a connection to that Wilson path, but that's not specifically why they're there.
Okay, because I was concerned that we have the path and now we're obligated to turn around and do something, or we have to, okay. Thank you.
So just a quick question, and this is precipitated by the fact that we have a road at almost failure. We need to go out for funding. As long as we're going out for funding, do we accommodate improved pedestrian pathways and bike pathways? That said, if we were to get the funding to do the road or not, whichever we do, if we'd made no changes to the road, typically when we do a full road rebuild, how many years would it be before we would come back and address this if we did nothing today?
If the road were rebuilt brand new, we are designing for typically a 20-year life. That is, if we did nothing to it within those 20 years, that would be the expected life. The reality is it'll probably last longer than that. We'll do maintenance and chip seals that will extend the life of that. But the design life of the pavement section is done to a 20-year design life.
So, and just for those here, we had discussions internally about this after the last meeting, and I asked our team to go back and revisit, to have these discussions. It's important because this is an investment of a home, right? And that, as your value increases, for some, that's retirement, right? And so you really want to maintain that asset. I think we as council members, the council, I can't speak on behalf of the council, but are very mindful of that. And so that's why we're taking so much time in this. We have a team that are professionals that do such an amazing job, and they're trying to make good decisions because their job is to ensure that we have the right pathways for 20 years from now, that we've done a really good job. And then we, as individuals sitting here listening, and I've had lengthy discussions regarding this, we take the decision very, very seriously because of the impact that it has. So you're trying to weigh the future of how do we improve a road and where do you go without impacting people's life, the investment that you've got. That's really, really important, or 100-year trees, right? How do we do that? And so we're trying to explore all the options and come up with some good options, possibly, or something, to move us forward.
So Mayor, just, if I may too, I know we're taking way longer than we were supposed to. Impact fees, what's the reason impact fees can't be used for this resurface?
Mayor, Councilman Bruner, this does not increase capacity of the roadway for vehicular travel, and so it is not a capacity expansion project, and therefore impact fees do not qualify for that.
They don't. It's renewal
Not
replacement.
an answer I wanted, but good answer.
Mayor Glee, over here.
Yes.
Daniel, so Roosevelt between Middleton and Midland was a terrible road. I drive that thing every day. And what the city did was they went through, it was so bumpy, I didn't know what was going to happen to it. We needed something to be done with it. The city went out and smoothed it off. And it's one of the best roads now. I can actually take a cup of coffee and not spill it driving because it's so smooth. And it's a neat, not one sidewalk was put in on either side. Why do we need to do that on Lake Lowell?
Mayor, Councilman Rodriguez, the improvements to Orchard, Roosevelt. Between Midland and Middleton were a chip seal. It was not a road rebuild.
I see.
And so that was just a surface treatment versus an actual pavement resection.
So you're saying
rebuild.
in another 10 years or another next year, you're going to be doing that again?
Roosevelt will eventually come up with the need for a rebuild, and at that point, we would be looking at doing these same type of improvements on that.
I see. Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. So I need to make sure I have this clear. So the purpose is a rebuild, but we're putting in bike lanes, but we're not improving traffic flow.
We are, the design life, as we do the design for this, we look at, okay, what is the volume of traffic there? And we are doing a 20-year design life. As we look at that, the traffic volumes that are there today and those that are projected to be there in 20 years are, the 3-lane section is adequate to handle that volume of traffic at the level of service that the city has adopted as our level of service. And so that's why we are not looking at adding travel lanes or that to this roadway.
I guess the nature of my question is thinking in 10 to 20 years, are we going to go back there and this is going to happen anyway, but we're going to actually widen the road and they're going to lose lots of property?
I would not anticipate that that's going to be a need in this area. While there is areas there that have some development potential, and that they're not large tracts of land in this area. As we look at the development as we go out, many of the draws that we see in the Compass transportation model that shows much of that traffic peels off at Midland or Middleton to head north to the main shopping areas and that through there. And so based on those models, we do not anticipate the need to widen that out further in the future.
Thank you.
So council, we are past our time on this, and I know that staff is looking for an answer. I don't know that we're ready for an answer this evening unless council would state otherwise.
Mayor,
We can postpone.
I would like to extend this. I want these folks, these 30 houses that are currently using this for parking to be aware. And before we make a decision on this. So that's my motion is that this gets, I hate to extend things. These folks have been here 2 different times and whatever, but that would be my motion.
I'll second the motion.
And then I have a question. There is a cost to doing a public hearing. It's a cost to the city and its time, but this is such a big deal. I'm thinking that we need to have a public hearing. And, which puts it out a little bit. And I'm so sorry, guys, because I know you work so hard and Daniel's going, oh my goodness. I mean, this is like going around it again and again and again, but it's a big decision. And we need to make the right decision. And you've done a lot of work on it, and I appreciate that. But I think that this does not qualify for a public hearing. However, to me, that's possibly the right thing to do, which is give the official opportunity to hear. And then we'll continue to refine. I think also if we don't widen, I mean, we need to know the ramifications, right? And we can talk a little bit more about that at your next presentation.
Mayor, council, I guess one question I would ask is if there's specific information, understand the communication on the parking. Is there specific questions or information that has not been provided or answered that you feel you need that we can bring back to help you make a decision?
Mayor, point of process. We have a motion and a second. Should we go ahead and vote?
We're still in discussion.
Or we
And the
can go ahead.
question would be if you want to revise the motion to include a public hearing. That would be a question.
I'll pull my second so that motion can be added.
I will go ahead and addendum in my motion that we will include a public hearing in the future for this.
I'll second the motion. And a question then for Daniel. If you are to respond to your question, if you can provide an overlay of where 67 feet in the right-of-way, where it currently happens along that corridor, if it's at Augusta, there's a little section across the street from Whisperwood where it appears maybe that's the 67-foot. I know the south part of the storage complex was a 40-foot right-of-way granted, so that you're looking at an 80-foot right-of-way at one point at that.
Yes, there are
But-
areas where we have 80 feet. Yeah.
Yeah. So 67 feet, if it's going back through, if you can give us an overlay of where that happens.
Probably the entire corridor. I think you're going to have to just say, this is what it is, and then that we have reached out to every person there and
Mayor Kling.
Yes.
Daniel, I know this is a lot of work, and I appreciate it, but it just reminds me of the signal versus the roundabout, and then the Augusta neighbor saying they never heard about it. So I think this due diligence is important, but really appreciate all the time and effort you've put in to meet with neighbors, do your work.
And a question I'll ask then is, what is the timing on the signalization at the intersection of Midland and Lake Lowell? Is that this spring?
We will, based on some information we have, I believe that will be going out to bid shortly.
Okay, great.
Mayor Klein?
Yes.
I'm sorry, just one more comment. I would like to see a report or document that says option number 4, rebuild the road and leave the property alone.
And that was option number 3 that we have here.
I know what number 3 says, but I'm thinking option number 4, just to wait, just to rebuild it. But,
But, yeah, I mean, add on to that, those, please include the cost, because my concern is we're getting dumped on folks here, but you're rebuilding a road and we're doing it without impact fees and on our own, that's affecting every taxpayer in the city of Nampa.
We would be doing it with a grant, because we're going to need a grant to do this. This is an expensive project. We do want to make a decision soon enough to allow us to get the preliminary design so that we can qualify for infrastructure grants because of the federal funding coming in. If we need to rebuild the road, we'd like to get it done, no matter what we do with it. If we don't change anything, we just don't want to miss the funding opportunities if it needs to be done. So, but we've got other roads we can do too, so, okay. And I think at that, we need, if there's no further discussion, roll call.
Rodriguez?
yes.
Machi? Yes. Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And Brunner?
Yes.
Okay, it is time for our public hearings. That said, I know Matt Turner's on, but he's on for 2. And so Matt, I apologize. Hopefully you can wait, if that's possible. Can he? Okay. So this is the Aclara Technologies and the irrigation pump systems. So the other one that we were going to get to had to do with Robin. And Robin, I apologize. Thank you for waiting. So at that, and fire will have to wait on the MOU. Is that okay? Okay. So let's move into our public hearings, and we'll move over to our first public hearing. And I'm going to do a switch right now. We're going to have, I would like a motion on item 6.4. This is the public hearing that's going to be continued to date certain of January 18th. And I would just stand for a motion to move this public hearing to that date.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Brunner?
Yes.
Machi?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
yes.
And Haverfield?
Yes.
Okay, we're ready for 6.1, which is an action item, and this is to approve the Community Development Block Grant 2020 program year. This is the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, which is the CAPR for submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Renewal on or before December 30th. And this has been approved in the FY22 budget. And Matt Jamison, thank you for being here.
Hello, everybody. Mayor Kling, Council. It's good to see everybody again. I'm glad to be back in front of you guys today. So another year has gone by. It's time to do what we annually report to HUD. It's called the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report. It's a CAPR. We submit this every year. It's just basically an accounting of what we did over the prior program year. So it's really more of a report card, if you will, on basically on funding spent, accomplishments made, things of that nature. But basically, it is a programmatic requirement. And we will look at, today just briefly, we'll highlight some of the total allocated funds, amount expended, funds remaining, especially the accomplishments achieved during the program year, which the program year, just for the sake of clarity, the CDBG program runs on what we call the 2020 program year is actually the 2021 fiscal year, so it's just always a year behind. So if I bounce back and forth between those, we're always talking about accomplishments achieved during the 2021 fiscal year. So. In general, council allocated $801,724 as the 2020 allocated funding from HUD. Additionally, we put $38,114 in prior program years funding, which was a total of around $839, which is allocated to activities to be carried out during the 2020 program year. We did receive during this last fiscal year and program year, we received $65,858.64 in program income, and that income came from the home improvement loan program, other affordable housing development where they're requiring repayment of the loans, And so that program income actually offsets grant money. So I always include it in here as adding funds back to that program available to be allocated to additional activities. So our total was $905,696.79. And then we did allocate the remaining second round of CARES Act funding, which brought our total allocation to $879 in CARES Act funding, which was a total of a little over $1.7 million that was allocated during the 2020 program year. This is a graph just showing the highlight of the actual activities that we allocated funding to during the 2021 fiscal year. Pretty standard, we allocate funding every year for administration planning activities, which is to help generate these types of reports, create an annual action plan, a consolidated plan. We did fund 4 public service activities, which Ketchikan County, Salvation Army, Nampa Family Justice Center, and the Meals on Wheels program. All fully expended their funding except for Salvation Army, or excuse me, Family Justice Center. They had some staff turnover. And so there was just a slight delay where nobody was being paid for a short amount of time. So we had a little bit of money unexpended, but not a common issue with public service. Usually they expend the full amount. The home repair loan program actually had a really great year. We'll talk some more about the accomplishments later, but we fully expended all of the money short by about $1,900. So we had a lot of interest and a lot of homes were helped during this last program year, which was really exciting. Brush Up Nampa also had a pretty good year. We helped 5 homes with the amount of volunteers we had, but you'll notice on here, there's a couple activities that we have not got to yet. They're actively on the books and scheduled to be starting any day. We're waiting in some cases on contractor availability and the availability of the playground equipment for the City Acres Park playground. Those are both expected to be, I believe, completed here in the first part of this 2022 calendar year. We're just, like I say, just waiting on those to get started. And then we did fund last year, which we do every year, some housing affordability project money. We did identify the Canyon Terrace apartments, which we contributed some funding to, and those are currently under development. I believe they are also scheduled to be completed this spring or summer of 2022, so we'll report those out, the accomplishments for that when that's funds expended. You'll notice there's quite an unexpended balance in administrative and planning. We also had a staff member move from our department to economic development, so there was a period of time where nobody was drawing those funds down, and then some of existing staff time was split between CARES Act admin and regular admin, so we did have some additional funding left over there.
Before you move on, Mayor, why hasn't there been anything done yet as far as on the ped ramps and the sidewalk improvements?
Those, my understanding was I just think was just waiting on getting it out to bid and getting a contractor on. I think the contractor's been awarded. I think it's just getting it on their schedule. We had to do a couple, because the cost came in so high, we had to do some sort of reevaluations and reassess what we could get accomplished with what the funding we had available. So they kind of went back and reassessed it and I think adjusted our bid documents. But I think at this point, we're just waiting on the contractor's schedule to begin, and I think it's in their queue. I think we're just waiting on that contract.
So you've already received bids, you've selected someone to work with, and their timing, there's no time start in the bid documents that they had to meet?
I believe they're supposed to be starting right away. I was out for a few weeks, but I anticipated that they were going to begin here in December. I did see them out doing some preliminary. I'll start visiting the site when I know there's people on site, just to do the Davis-Bacon monitoring, things of that nature, but.
Well, that's a concern to me. If you planned on it starting in December, winter conditions have to be taken into consideration.
Right.
Weather protection, all of that. It makes more sense that you would start in the spring anyway, but were the bid documents put out so that they would start in the winter months?
Well, I believe that they were planning I think they wanted to get it going sooner. I'm not sure what caused the delay. I try to leave that part
Who is the one to talk to us then as far as to get those answers?
Well, I don't know that he's in here. I've been working with Clemente and
Okay, can you have
Crystal.
him reach out so that I can ask him that?
Yeah, I think, and the funding is not limited to, if it makes more sense to carry it out in the spring, I have no objection to it being pushed out to the spring, if it makes more sense for the quality of the work.
Well, it does. I mean, because you're not working around winter conditions. You're
Yes.
not having to increase your dollar cost to the project to cover that, just in the event that there is snow and ice
I
and
think
whatever.
originally when it went out to bid, the plan was to have it begin this fall. Our intent all along was to try to get it done before the end of the program year. I think they just ran into some delays that pushed us out past September 30, and at which point I basically just amend the agreement and I push it out for one more fiscal year, which the funding can go out
There's
that
no
far.
liquidated damages or anything like that that they're
We're,
subject
as
to?
far as I know, we're still on agreement for a fixed amount. CDBG funding, as you know, I try not to allow any really changes to the budget because it's kind of, my opinion, is sort of fixed. So we are at a pretty firm 140,000. I can reach out and follow up with Clemente and get you some more answers on
Thank you.
on for sure their plan, but I thought they were planning to move forward still here right away. So,
Yeah, it makes more sense that they'd hold off for a few months.
and I have no objection to that. I leave that up to those folks that a little more knowledge in weather and construction than me. So. Just another chart here just highlights the CAPER primarily really is looking at the activities that we funded in 2020. This is actually just like this other construction activities that are going to carry over into next year. These are all activities that, due to supply chain issues and COVID, all kinds of things, we had all kinds of construction projects that ran over the last program year into this current 2021 fiscal year. All of those at this point have been completed. I think we've pretty well expended most of the funds. We had a balance of 47,000 from the 617 that was still outstanding. But most of those activities did complete. Lions Park Shelter was just a delay. You'll notice later we don't count their accomplishments. They finished the playground first, and then there was a little delay in the shelter being built. But it's the same census tract, so I already claimed the accomplishments, so we won't be reporting those on this CAPER.
You're clean. Yeah. So like on the Family Justice Center remodel, it says it's complete, but there's an unexpended balance. What happens to those funds then?
So those funds now, they've been sort of tied to that activity in our HUD reporting system. Once I complete that activity, it basically throws that money down to just an available to commit line item. And so each year when we do our annual action plan, I look at that available to commit number. And so we come to you with our funding allocation from HUD for that year. And then we look at that line item for funds available to commit. And then we try to build that particular fiscal year budget around those two numbers. And then as we complete activities throughout the year, that available to commit number goes up or
So
down.
it rolls forward.
Yeah, it will roll forward. We have 7 years typically from a funding agreement. So in this case, this could carry out, like 2025, we could still be allocating that money out. So.
Mayor Kling.
Oh, yeah.
Just one follow-up question, just so I understand what your presentation is meant to be. We've already approved the allocation of the CBDG funds.
Yeah.
So are you just giving us an update of what's been spent to date?
Yes, yeah. It's just an
You're not
accounting.
You're not asking for the ability to move funds into different
Not
pots?
today, no. I'm just showing you what we said we were gonna spend, what we spent, what's left over. And then later I'll tell you how many people we assisted. This is just a report that we send to HUD that just tells them, this is the money we spent, this is how many people we assisted. It's really more of an accounting, so I just am trying to, I guess, just let you guys know that you have priorly approved everything in the far left column, the allocated funding. What's in the middle is what we actually spent. Sometimes that's through cost savings, sometimes it's just they aren't able to assist as many people as they hoped. And then the last item is what's gonna be freed up for future spending.
Okay, and that's I just wanted to have that clarity.
Yeah.
We're not being asked to make any different changes to what we've already approved and presented. It's just a recap of where we're at.
Yes, this is purely a informational sort of report that we send to HUD. I've just tried to compile the information into just a format that works for you guys.
It just requires our approval, council approval, and it probably must be requiring a public hearing so that if anyone
Yes.
had any concerns or didn't agree with the presentation, But basically, it's no more than a report that we say, yes, we validate your report, we understand it, that we had approved this in the budget, yes, we understand what you have done, this money's left over, and then it's just the approval so that they
Yeah.
can submit it in a timely fashion.
And I'll be back here in the next couple of council meetings to ask you to move some money around for me, but that won't be in today's meeting.
Well, and again, when I'm pointing out these things that are obvious that haven't begun yet, I'm asking the question why.
Yes.
But then again, now at this point, we're into December, that just gives me a red flag, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah, I think initially, I don't know that the initial design was done until towards the end of summer. And so I think that was really a staffing thing. And then by the time it got out to bid, it was anticipated to be started in fall. But like I say, with, I think, the material and construction delays, it just
And we
keeps
can follow up
carrying.
after
I'll
this
follow up with you
meeting
on
if
that because
those-
I'm,
Mayor, a couple
you.
questions. I think you're going
Yeah.
to get to it here, Matt. Appreciate your presentation. $700,000 at the bottom of this CARES Act. So is there a window of time that we have to be able to use that?
yeah, it's the same 7-year window really
So
on.
we're, so we're just in our first year now.
Yeah, and it took a little while for some of these to ramp up. So specifically with the CARES Act, we had the 141,000 that was administered or allocated out with the first round. In my conversations with advocates, I think there was such a long span of time where there was a moratorium on evictions that they weren't getting at the very beginning. They weren't getting a lot of people calling them and looking
So
for.
do we have a strategic plan to work with Salvation Army and the different homeless, even as far as shelters and so on for this $700,000? I mean, in the last 3 council meetings, we have had homeless population come to us and
Yeah.
asking for a need. So are we in the process or going to
Yes.
start a strategic plan with other amenities as
So
far as? Okay.
Salvation Army has staffed up and they now have the shelter running at full capacity. They also had to hire staff that didn't exist prior because before we allocated funding, they were only open for 3 months of the calendar year, and we've allowed them to stay open the remainder of the year. And then on into next year as the funding allows. So we're paying in many ways for the cleaning supplies and the staff time associated with running the shelter. At this point, I think they're expending money monthly through staff time, and I don't see them having any issue getting that money expended over the next probably 1.5 calendar years, which is all within the limitations of the grant. But I fully expect them to get those funds expended. Salvation or St. Alphonsus will actually expend those funds in one lump sum. They had already allocated some cost to a different grant, and so they've allocated some to us just later in the program year. So that they will fully expend here probably in the next 3 months,
So Matt,
just through regular draws.
do we have this homelessness support and homelessness prevention?
Yeah.
Are those funds that we currently could talk about how we could utilize those?
Yes, so
Okay.
the reason I include them there in a little darker green is that we, at the time that we allocated all this funding, we asked council to allocate a total amount to homelessness support and homelessness prevention. So homeless support would be things like rent and utility assistance, something more along the lines of what Advocates is doing, and then the prevention is Advocates, and the homelessness support would be Salvation Army, Rapid Rehousing. I reached out to Ketchikan County to talk to them about possibly taking on some additional rapid rehousing. At the time that I spoke with her, she said she was just up to their eyeballs in grant money, and at this point, she was reluctant to take it on because they weren't sure that they would be able to expend it in a timely manner. So I'll circle back with her and/or Salvation Army and see whichever one feels like they could take the money on sooner. But those are both funds that we could make a decision as council to take those funds and reallocate to something completely different. Or we could say, let's throw more money into the shelter, keep it running for longer. Let's give Salvation Army some rapid rehousing funds. All those things could be.
I would like to just suggest that we have a discussion around this at a later time.
Yeah, we'll come
I appreciate
back.
knowing that it's available, and I think that we need to have a discussion before we allocate those funds and before we commit and
Yes.
get the expectations.
Right.
Because we may want to go a different route. And so I think that we need to have some discussions around where the greatest need is in our community and how we could maximize the utilization of the funds and make the greatest impact.
Agreed. And at the time, I think we allocated this, it was at the very beginning of all of this, and we were making our best sort of assessment of what the greatest need in the community was going to be. It may be that, 6 months from now, we see a really big spike in the rent and utility assistance. They just really use the rest of the money. We might see that it's really died off and we need to do something with that money as well. So we'll certainly have more discussion about it. I just wanted to bring it to your attention that this money is still, it's technically allocated in HUD's eyes to these two line items, but it does not have an activity yet. So we will, down the road, we can either choose to keep it there or we can move it out.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
And just by sort of way of a metric that HUD likes us to try to calculate annually is that they don't allow us to spend more than 20% of the current year's entitlement and the current year's program income. And then for the public service activities, they look at the current entitlement and the prior program year income. I'm not sure why they differentiate there. I understand for public service because that's a hard number. I know what my last year's program income was. I wish they would just make it the same for both because it's easier for me. And I know both numbers. I'm speculating at the beginning of the year what my program income will be. But in either case, because we had so much money left over in admin, we only came in at 14% of the total grant expenditure, which we had 6% still on the table. And then we came in at 14%, which is by design, in case there's any issues with the public service to make sure we don't run afoul of that 15% cap. In both cases, we came in below HUD's maximum requirement. All right, so all that money is spent. And this graph here will show I broke it out into the two different program years. The top is the 2020 activities that we actually funded in the last fiscal year. As you can see, Ketchikan Canyon County, they helped 76 individuals with rapid rehousing. Family Justice Center helped 32 people that are fleeing some kind of domestic violence. Really what they're helping them with is some short-term counseling and help them with short-term housing solutions. And then Salvation Army assisted 63 people with rapid rehousing activities, and then Meals on Wheels had 155 meals served to different individuals throughout the program year. Not meals served, 155 individuals receiving meals during the program. Thank you. That was a really low number if it was just meals. And then the home loan program, again, I can't say enough about Krista and her efforts. She had 11 home loans during the year, which is actually, it's more than anticipated, and it's definitely more than we've ever done since I started. The sidewalk repair program, that's something that I will be coming back to you guys at a future date to talk about some options there. We did have one sidewalk that was completed. We used 2019 program year money to complete that activity. We didn't spend any from the 2020 program year. We have had a really hard time getting traction with that activity. We've done tons of marketing. We try to piggyback it off of every other program we offer, and we really have struggled to get qualifying households even interested in applying. So I'll come to you guys later. We'll talk about some options for this coming year and what to do with this money that was not spent for the 2020 program year. But we do have some ideas on a way to move forward with that activity. Go ahead.
Yes.
They're kind of scattered. I think there was a pretty good mix around town, if I recall. I think I mapped them at one point and they were kind of scattered around. There are quite a few. I think there was one in North Nampa, several over off of Davis area, like between Middleton and what would be 7th? And then some in the downtown area. I think in this one here is reporting just this is an internal run program that we're just paying for someone to get their sewer line repaired. And then they are obligated, I guess we hold their home sort of in collateral for 5 years. So this is the internal run home repair loan program. And then this one is not, this is not new development, it's existing owner occupied rehab. And so it's really more about keeping a family in their home. But that one, we did accomplish 11. this year, and we did almost completely expend the money. So it was a pretty good year. We reached a lot of people. Brush Up Nampa was 5 homes this year. That's in large part based on the level of team participation. I think we'll go out a little sooner this year to try to open up the team applications, get a little more teams in if we can for the 2020 program year, or 21 program year. And then again, City Acres Playground, I'm not reporting those. Those are the 2 city-run projects that we'll report in next year's CAPER because we haven't expended the funds. And then the housing company, we've expended the funds, but we won't report that one until that one is at a point where it's a completion and they're leasing up the apartments. That's when I'll report those to HUD. So you'll see those in a future CAPER. And then the 2020 activities, pretty much is all the same ones we saw before. These are primarily, a bunch of them are area-based sort of sidewalk improvements. So you see really large numbers there, 10,790 and 3,045 individuals. Those are basically an area basis, and the Salvation Army remodel, which we helped put in the additional security measures and which allows them, I guess, to control the flow of people through there in a much safer way for the people that are working there through overnight and secure the building overall. They were 150 individuals that were helped during that time. And then Nampa Family Justice Center remodel, which was 1,252 for the year. And then again, the CARES Act, I just separated that out just so you can see those differently than the regular grant funds. The Salvation Army did assist 77 people so far since they've received that. And in other words, 77 people have been housed in the shelter. And then the advocates have helped 22 individuals with rent and or utility assistance. St. Alphonsus, I'll report those numbers once we make that first payment. So I'll report those in next year's CAPER.
Matt, I am
yeah.
interested, and I know we need to wrap, but I find it interesting that our numbers in chart 6 are a lot lower than what was expected.
In the
Chart, the next chart, chart number 6,
Oh,
the one
sorry.
we were just in. That
Went the
one
wrong
right
way.
there. No,
in
that
this one?
yes.
Oh, and that's so when they applied for this CARES Act grant funding, it was with the understanding that we would, in Salvation Army's case, it was the understanding, I think we were looking at forecasting 18 months of basically keeping it open so they're planning for an 18-month reporting period.
And this reporting is how long?
So they've now been, I think, fully operational for 4.5, I think.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, so that number will just continue to climb, and we'll always benchmark it back to the same 225. So that's what they said they could probably help, or how many people that they would move in and out, the non-duplicated individuals. And then advocates, I think we've worked with them. I feel like that's a low number. I feel like there's a greater need out there, so we're trying to work with them to figure out better ways to market that program. We certainly try to push it in all the committees that we participate in. And then I want to see, we've worked with, through some HUD training, we've tried to work with them to help relax some of the standards they're requiring for the COVID piece. And at HUD's suggestion, they've sort of reduced some of those barriers to getting people to qualify under the CARES Act. And so we've been trying to work with them to make it so that they can help more people.
If they don't expend the funds in the required time, what happens with the funds?
The same as any grant money, it would just, at some point,
It comes back and
they
gets
would reabsorb it back in as HUD would.
Okay.
If we decide, if we don't see enough activity there and we want to move a different route, then we could just work with them to sort of close it out and try to reallocate the funds somewhere where we think it'll make the meet the best need of the community. I think we can make some more headway there. I'm just trying to work with them to get some better information out there.
Thank you.
I thought I'd just highlight a couple of the Brush Up Nampa homes because it was kind of a fun program, and Krista did a great job again with this one with the help of code compliance staff. It was a really smooth event. On the left, it's kind of hard to see, they're small, but the left is the if you zoom in on that, it's pretty worn through paint. On the right, it's just the team that was out working that day. There were a lot of fun people, they did a great job. This particular one was an older gentleman's home, and this one was one of our sponsors' teams came out, and a bunch of youth that were working on that house. And that house actually had quite a bit of improvement, really good in the daylight. But both those homes, the people were extremely excited and happy. And again, Krista did a great job. Can't thank her enough for her efforts. Just a quick mention of, these are the sponsors we did have. SunPro, which sponsors us every year. Idaho Premier Painting. That gentleman actually painted 2 of our homes that were the most need of a lot of prep work. And so he did those, and then he estimated all the remaining homes, the need for the paint that we would need, so we wouldn't overbuy or overcommit. And then Trio was the team that painted that one house. They donated a $500 cash donation, and then we had one Nampa resident donated $100. She was a prior recipient of Brush Up Nampa, and she was so grateful that she donated of her own money, $100. Super nice lady. And just today, Idaho Power walked in the door and handed us a $500 check because they participated last year with a team, and they all got to vote on what activity they wanted to contribute to, and so they all chose 2 activities, and one of them was Brush Up Nampa. And so she delivered Krista a check for $500 today. It's pretty cool.
Congratulations. That's
So we have next year's supply money already sewn up. And then lastly, one thing I forgot to mention with the CARES Act money is we had a halftime person through Personnel Plus, and with the CARES Act money, we brought her on full-time now to help me with the administration of that particular grant. And her name's Hannah Stark. You guys will hopefully get to meet her at the next meeting. She's also been a great addition to our team. And we hope to keep her on in the future with that extra money I have in admin and some CARES Act. But as far as today goes, unless you have any questions about the actual accomplishments or the money spent, all of that information will be in that report to HUD. It needs to be submitted on or before December 30th, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have them. Sorry for the long presentation.
That's great. Thank you. Council? Well, actually, I'm sorry. Are there any questions?
public
Because this
public
is a
hearing,
public
yes.
hearing. Yes, so are there any questions for Matt? Okay. Stand by. This is a public hearing. Do we have anyone signed up to testify?
We have nobody.
Okay, so we have no one signed up to testify. Is there anyone here that would like to testify or had intended to? Yes. Yes, you may come forward. So yes, come forward and state your. That's great. Come forward and state your name and address. Hi.
My name is Albert Bradley, and I own a home 16127 Franklin Boulevard. I actually develop in Nampa and do some renovations here in the area and was unaware of these funds. And I've been to planning and zoning multiple times and have actually asked them about it, and they were pretty unclear as to how to go about getting access or bidding the jobs to get access to those funds. So if there was a way to do that, I guess more efficiently, so a guy like me that walks in the door for the first time could be made aware of that. I would love to take advantage of some of those funds that you have available and help more people. So
Thank you so
if there's a way to do that, it'd be great.
Thank you. Thank you, please.
So I guess to make sure I'm clear, you're a developer?
I develop and renovate.
Okay, so there's a couple ways you can probably participate with CDBG
Matt, go
funds.
ahead and speak into the microphone.
sorry.
That way we have
Sorry
it
about
recorded. That's okay.
With CDBG funds, they always have to, at least, 70% of the time, they have to be for the benefit of low to moderate income households. So if you're developing housing, then I can pay for pre-construction soft costs, so permitting fees, engineering design work, things of that nature, which won't trigger any Davis-Bacon or anything else on your overall project as a whole.
Is it just in the opportunity zone?
No, that funding can be used anywhere. What it typically might help you with is an application for some sort of tax credit otherwise. The opportunity zone, I think you can always, if you're building something in there, I think you can always sort of apply for that with or without my funding. But what we try to fund annually is a housing affordability pool of money. And then at some point this year, I'll make a sort of a public announcement that the funding is available. If you have a project that is sort of shovel-ready, you can come in and apply for those funds. And so if you want, I can catch your name afterward, and I can start including you in on that distribution list. Okay?
Great.
That sounds good.
Thank you. Okay, so tonight it is an action item, and the action requested is to approve the City of Nampa's Community Block Development Grant 2020 Program Year Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report for submission to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development before December 30th. I guess I forgot to close public hearing. Keep forgetting that. So in that there is no one interested, I think I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now, are there any further questions for Matt? And what is the will of the council?
Mayor, I'll make the motion to approve the City of Nampa's Community Development Block Grant 2020 Program, your consolidated annual performance and evaluation report for submission to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development on or before December 30, 2021.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Bruder?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Munchy?
Yes.
And Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate it. Matt, we appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thanks, Krista.
Thank you, Krista. Well. Yes.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, we're ready for action item 6.2. This is annexation and zoning to RS 22, single-family residential, 22,000 square foot zoning district to connect to city utilities for an existing single-family home at 1414 Southside Boulevard. This is for Vanessa and Evan Tonya, if I said that correctly?
Tona.
Hi, Tona. So go
Nice to
ahead
see
and
you
share
guys.
is your address the 1414
Yes, the
Southside?
1414 Southside.
Thank
Yes. Yeah, thank you guys. Never done one of these. Pretty interesting to sit back and watch. We're just trying to get our old home annexed to the city because we have a really old septic system. We've had it pumped multiple times and it continues to back up on us and it's a real bummer. And so, yeah, we're just trying to hook into the city and get that going. So,
Great.
yeah.
Council, do you have any questions? Thank you so much for coming in. It is interesting, isn't it?
It's a lot. I know my wife was here at the zoning thing and I was working, I couldn't get here and she's like, it's pretty easy, but I don't know. And after listening to the last one, I'm like, I don't have any slides or anything set up, so.
You know what, you're okay. So
Yeah,
staff will
we'll be
take
all right.
care of you there.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. So
No
hang
problem.
tight. It
Okay.
is a public hearing, but my guess is it'll go fast. And
All
thank
right,
you for
perfect.
waiting
Thanks
so long.
for not
Yeah.
showing slides of the backup.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay.
Good.
Doug? Yes, thank you.
Mayor and Council, Doug Critchfield, good evening. The request, as was stated by the applicant, is to connect to city sewer system. The property is currently located in an area that has zoning on the east and west sides. There's high density to the east and single family to the west. The land uses are all single family residences of various sizes in this area. It is in a low density in the comprehensive plan feature land use map, and utilities are available to the site. The annexation and the zoning regulations are stated in your staff report, and once again, I'm glad to always talk about any of those regulations if council desires. This is also, the request is to be zoned into an RS 22, which allows for lot sizes that are anywhere from 17,000 to 33,000 square feet. If this property were to develop, they would have to subdivide or to split the lot. Currently, the lot's 0.82 acres. Because this is surrounded by residential land uses and it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, the staff feels that the purpose meets all of the requirements of the zoning district in the area in which it's located. And this project was recommended by the Nampa Planning and Zoning Commission to move forward for your approval this evening. The correspondence that we received on the project was fairly minimal. There were some comments from the engineering division in particular. The applicant will need to dedicate 40 feet of right-of-way from section line into the property, and the applicant is aware of that requirement. With that, the conditions of approval are stated in your staff report, and I'd be glad to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Doug. Is there anyone signed up? Okay, so this is a public hearing, and we do not have anyone signed up to testify other than the applicant in support of and no one in opposition to. Is there anyone here this evening that had intended to testify that did not get signed up? Okay, seeing none, this would be an opportunity for the applicant to make any final comments before we close public hearing. I do want to ask you that you understand the conditions of approval and you've discussed those and you're good with that? Yes. Yes, okay. With that, I would stand, unless the council has questions for the applicant? Seeing none?
Just going to make a motion.
Okay, so I'd stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and then Councilwoman Levi.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve the annexation and zoning to RS 22 for a home at 1414 South Boulevard to connect to city utilities and for Mr. Tona, and in case number ANN 218-21, and including conditions of approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Werner?
Yes.
Machi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And Levi?
Yes.
Okay, you're done. You're good to go. Thank you. We are ready for item 6.3 on the agenda. This is an action item. This is a zoning map amendment from industrial park to RS6, single-family residential, 6,000 square feet, zoning district, and potential development agreement at 16127 North Franklin Boulevard. This is for Albert Bradley, and the original concept is to continue as residential. As it's stated, is our, thank you, applicant here. Hi, go ahead and come forward again and state your name again and address, if you would, please.
Albert Bradley, 16127 North Franklin Boulevard. At the city council meeting, I was informed of the items that I needed to accomplish. I believe I have done those. I dedicated the 40 feet of right-of-way through a survey that was completed, and then obviously the deeds were recorded. So I believe outside of that, city council approved it and passed me forward to you guys today.
Okay, planning and
So,
zoning.
I believe that's.
It was planning and zoning.
Yeah, it was
probably.
planning and zoning, yes. And so if there's anything else I need to do or supply you with the records, I can do that.
So what we'll do is we'll have a staff report,
Okay.
then we'll open public hearing,
Okay.
and then we'll ask you to come back. So if there's any questions or any more information we need, we'll have you come right back as soon as we go through those
Okay.
next two things.
No problem.
And thank you so much for being here.
Okay.
Thank you. And does anyone have any questions before he sits down? Okay, we'll have you back in just a minute.
Okay.
Hi, Christy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The action requested from you this evening is for approval or denial of a zoning map amendment from IP, which is Industrial Park to RS6 for the property located at 16127 Franklin Boulevard. In August of 2003, this property was annexed and zoned to IP as one complete parcel. At some point, the property was split and an industrial building was built on the back of this parcel and left the residence intact on the front. It is currently surrounded by IP on the north, south, and west, and then across Franklin Boulevard on the east, it is a single-family subdivision that is zoned RS6. Water and sewer services already exist to the property, and any services that are not utilized at the time of development or redevelopment should be abandoned to the main. That was one of engineering's conditions. So the applicable regulations for rezone that need to be considered in your decision are listed in your staff report. There was correspondence only from the building department that said that any future development would have to meet the standard Title IV building requirements. And then engineering has requested the 40-foot right-of-way dedicated along Franklin, which has apparently already been underway, and then annexation into the municipal irrigation district. So the future land use designation on this property is industrial, but across the street is medium-density residential. Therefore, it can be stretched one parcel deep. The RS zoning district does allow for single-family residential. It may be argued that consideration of this is reasonable, given that the property is eligible by law for consideration of this rezone, that the applicant intends to continue the residential use for the property, and that city utility services already exist and emergency services are available to the property. So should commission choose to approve this request, staff recommends approval with the conditions as listed in your staff report. There were a total of 3, not a ton. And this is your potential motion. I will stand for any questions.
Can I ask you a quick question? Did planning and zoning recommend this for approval?
They did,
They did.
yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
about a month ago they did.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Kristen? I don't see any. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So this is a public hearing. And again, we don't have anyone signed up to testify other than the applicant in favor of, and no one signed up in opposition. Is there anyone here this evening that had intended to testify? Seeing no one, this would be an opportunity for the applicant to give any last comments, or for council. Do you have any questions for the applicant? It's pretty straightforward. Do you have any closing comments? Nope. Okay, I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, council discussion.
Make a motion to approve the zoning map amendment from IP to RS6 zoning district at 16127 North Franklin Boulevard for Albert Bradley, with all conditions as listed in the staff report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Werner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And Mucci.
Yes.
There you go, Mr. Bradley. You ready to go? Thank you. Okay, item 6.4 on the agenda was continued to date certain of January 18th, as moved earlier. We are ready for item 6.5 on the agenda. I believe we have 2 more agenda items under our public hearing. And item 6.5 is an action item. This is a fee schedule resolution that we would be adopting new and updated fees for planning and zoning applicants and permits. This is related to annexation, de-annexation, appeals, comprehensive plan text, map amendments, conditional use permit, short preliminary, final condo plats, home occupation permits, kennel licensing, legal nonconforming use, mobile park, final preliminary planned unit development, master plan, community, property boundary adjustment, RV park, vacation, variance, limited staff variance, zoning map amendment, extension, and permit necessary for an accessory structure over 200 feet. This is for the City of Nampa Planning and Zoning. This is item 269-2021. And our applicant would be Rodney is on, and Rodney's online. It just took a second for me to go, yes, he's online. So I appreciate it. Rodney's online. He has a cold this evening, and we really have tried to encourage those with the colds to not share them with us all right before Christmas. And so, Rodney, thank you for being with us this evening.
You bet, Mayor. Thank you. Sorry I can't be there. Can you see my screen?
We can.
Okay, great. Go through this pretty quickly then. Maybe. There we go. You've read the requested action. The city code in 10.1.14 outlines the process for adoption of the fees for planning and zoning. And I've sought the direction from our council and our legal counsel, and we're given the direction to hold a public hearing as well. So that's what we're doing today after a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Department. Excuse me, the Planning and Zoning Commission. I've received no correspondence regarding the proposed fees. And then just a little bit of history. The Planning and Zoning Department on November 23rd recommended approval with all of the conditions in the proposed fee changes, except that they recommended that all fees that are not multiples of 5 should be rounded up to the nearest multiple of 5. So I'll go through that in a little more detail in just a minute, but that was their recommendation. So just a little bit of analysis here. City Council, you've emphasized that growth should pay for itself. We recognize that as well and wanted to make sure that our fees are adequately covering the cost of doing services so that the people of Nampa are not subsidizing the development of Nampa. Nampa's Planning and Zoning Department has traditionally charged fees far less than the actual cost of processing applications. Staff is proposing updates to most existing fees and proposing 5 new fees that are related to the approvals for Title 10 that you recently approved. And those new fees or those new applications that you approved in the zoning code update are listed on the screen: property boundary adjustments, staff review variances, CUP and variance extension fees, master plan communities, and accessory structures under 200 square feet. Those are all new. So just a little background on the basis for how we came to recommend these proposed fees. We did a pretty thorough analysis internally, and we looked at time required for each type of application that comes to our department. Excuse me. And we compared that to our hourly pay for each of those staff members that are working with that application. And then we had also added a percentage of overhead that's a traditionally accepted percentage of about 50%. So, and then we times that by the planning and zoning staff time that we anticipated spending on each application. We coordinated that methodology with Public Works fee specialist, Jacob Allen, and we compared the existing and the proposed fees to other communities, including Caldwell, Meridian, Boise, and Idaho Falls. And then after I talked with Jacob Allen in the Public Works Department, he recommended that I take this to a third party to make sure that even though the methodology looked really good, he suggested we take it just so we have some an outside perspective looking at these fees. And so we took it to Galena Consulting, and Westcott incorporated it into the building department's fee analysis as well. And they took a little bit different approach than we did, but essentially it came down to the same conclusion that and I will jump to that one, they both came out saying that our fees were short of what the expense is to process these applications. So planning department's methodology, fees for service are well below the actual cost of service. The proposed fees are almost exclusively below the actual cost of services, and the proposed fees are less than comparable cities. Galena Consulting, fees for services are well below the actual cost. Some cost recovery is attained through higher building permit fees, though. But even with those higher building permit fees, the proposed fee increases would still be below the cost of services when factoring in the building permit fees. So these are the recommended findings. Those are in your staff report. And a couple of possible motions for you to consider. I also added another motion, and that's on your screen here, in case you wanted to adopt what was recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission to do the five increments of 5 in our fees. And then I'm happy to go over these. These are in your staff report, but I'm happy to go over these in detail if you have questions about them. These are all the fees with Galena Consulting's estimate of cost, our staff estimated costs, our current fee, our staff proposed fee, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission's proposed fees. And with that, I would stand for questions.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Rodney. How long is this fee schedule supposed to last before it's reviewed again?
Well, that's a great question, Mayor and Council. Unfortunately, our department hasn't done a lot of these fee studies in the past. And so I'm not really sure, because it's just been such a good, significant time since we've last done an estimate. And frankly, in the past, the council has been hesitant to increase fee costs to equal the cost that it takes to process the fees. So I'm guessing, but at least a few years. But I would like to analyze these fees on an annual basis from now on.
Mayor Kling, follow up? Thanks. With this and then the ensuing public hearing, I think it's really important that if they're not evaluated annually, that there's some indexing that goes into this to make sure that we're maintaining a fee schedule where you're not actually subsidizing builders and others to do their work. So we really are ensuring growth pays for growth.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
also, maybe I'm not reading this right, Rodney. Thanks for all your work on this, by the way. But I agree with Councilwoman Mucci that it needs to be indexed. But also, I'm not understanding when you said we're not going to subsidize in the future. The estimated costs, there's numerous proposed fees that do not cover the estimated costs. So I guess I'm not understanding that comment, and then seeing this in chart form, and it doesn't seem to be a reality.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, valid point. My response to that just is what Galena Consulting found, is that our building permit fees are higher for the builders than would be the expense to process those building permit fees. So in the end, the development community are covering the costs, at least a good percentage of the costs, but it's coming out of different sources. And Galena Consulting said, even with those building permit fees, it feels like we're still within that range of covering the cost. Below, those fees are below the amount to cover the cost of providing the service.
Mayor, could I
Yes.
add a comment?
Please.
So within the two areas where we charge fees, development services and planning and zoning, development services charges sufficient fees to cover all of their internal costs, and planning and zoning does not. Their fee structure is much lower. They have, maybe $1 million budget with, I don't recall the exact number of dollar fees they've given, but it's substantially lower than their costs. So they absorb a lot more cost internally. So I agree with what Rodney's saying. I think their fee structure is a little lower than it could be, and then we could help defray more of their costs and pass that on, because they're incurring costs that the city's having to absorb.
So just for clarity, I think I heard, but then I think I heard something different, that the building department fees adequately cover the cost or more than the actual cost for our builders. But go ahead, Doug.
For development services, not planning and zoning.
Well, planning and zoning is under development services. So what I'm trying to separate out is there a reason why we didn't come forward with a planning and zoning increase? We want to make sure we're covering our costs. So I'm hearing a couple different things and I'm a little confused. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm too. So let's go back. Hi, Pat. So Rodney, Patrick has come up and I think he'll.
I'd like to clarify some of the statements
Thank you.
that Rodney had. In the past probably 5 or 6 years, building permits for permits that are over $1 million have garnered more fee than we have expended, which has caused a surplus in our fund balance. That said, there's supposed to be a surplus in our fund balance. If you go to your average Corey Barton home or even a custom home, the fees, we do collect the requisite amount of fees for the effort expended. It's just these very large projects that we've had in the last few years, like the Amazons, the Audible, things like that. We take in more than we could likely expend. That said, in a downturn in the economy, when I got here in 2013, we were still suffering and we had of not having adequate permits to really make our budget. So we've had this windfall, but the windfall won't be there forever. So at a certain point, building won't be able to subsidize planning. Right now, since we did have a surplus, the decision was made for the next 2 to 3 years that we would use that surplus to offset the planning and zoning budget. That said, I think the real reason why planning and zoning fees are customarily lower than what it actually takes to run the department is because not everything that goes through planning and zoning comes to fruition. And the other thing is it's also trying to subsidize growth a little bit.
So,
And that's just a mindset, and that's customary. The other thing is every 2 to 3 years, we have done a combined fire, building, and planning and zoning fee. The last one, other than the one that was just done this year, Rodney wasn't a part of because he wasn't here. Norm would have been a part of that. So we do validate these fees, and since I've been here, and likely before, the decision's been made by prior councils to subsidize the planning and zoning department, and that's customary in Meridian, and it's also customary in Boise as well.
So Mayor, prior to this current year, FY '21, planning and zoning was part of general gov, and general gov paid the entire bill. So to reduce the tax burden on the citizens, we moved it to development services with building, so that Patrick's surplus could pay their extra, the value differential between what they receive in fees and what they generate in cost to the city. So,
And I think it's important for council to know that prior to this move, previously, historically, planning and zoning was in the development services budget. During the downturn, we evidently, before I came in, we pulled planning and zoning out because we didn't have the budget. We spent the budget back in the urban renewal days, and we did not have the budget to actually support our planning and zoning team, so it moved to general fund. We have moved it back into, as it originally was with the city, into development services as a whole. So with that said, I'm curious, Rodney, and Patrick touched on it, can you remind me, in the analysis of the planning and zoning fees with other municipalities, how do we compare to the other cities in this same chart that you've presented to us?
So I don't show the chart on here. It's in your staff report, but it is comparable. It's a little bit low still, but it's comparable to a lot of other communities. Almost exclusively, we're still lower than almost every other community, but we're not a lot lower. It's pretty comparable.
Okay, Rodney, there's not a lot of clarity coming from that right there. So if you don't mind me saying so, because you're saying we're a little bit lower, but not too much lower. And so I'm looking at, I believe it's Exhibit A, page 511 in our packet, is what I'm looking at, which has the application, the current fee and the proposed fee. And so what I think I hear you saying is the proposed fee is somewhat in keeping with other municipalities. Is that correct?
That's correct. And to Patrick's point, the other communities are doing very similar things that we're doing. And so it's really hard to compare apples to apples exactly. But we did our best. We tried to gather as much information about all the different types of application and the fees from these different communities. And then when we tried to compare them to ours, we do ours just a little bit different than they do. We call it maybe a bit differently. But when I compared the other communities to ours and what we're proposing, we're still under, for the most part, we're still just under what Meridian, Caldwell, Boise, Idaho Falls, all of those communities are charging for those applications.
So Mayor Rodney, what's the reason we want to be under? I mean, we are growing like crazy, and I realize, you know, by indexing or doing things, looking at this on an annual basis, I mean, I would think we could make the change, but right now, I don't think we are necessarily, I mean, I'll just speak for myself, but wanting to incentivize, you know, huge development. Other than, I know, as far as commercial and that type of thing, by all means, but as far as residential. So I guess I'm not understanding why would, as you said in here, Nampa's current fees are almost without exception significantly less than other communities charge.
Yeah.
Significantly less is what is in writing. And I'm hearing a little different verbiage from you, but I guess I'm still not understanding. I guess my main point is, at this point in time, I think Patrick is correct. I mean, things are going to change with time, and we need to change with those times. But currently, we just need to make sure P&Z is covering their expenses, and I don't want to be relying on building to do so just because other communities are doing so. Anyway, that's my own opinion, so I'll be quiet.
So, Mayor and Council, I agree with you. It's been the policy of the city councils in the past. You know, I'm not sure how long I've worked for the city now, but when I was here before, the policy in the past has been they have not favored an increase to these fees, significant increases. And so I guess I went into this expecting that that I'd get a little bit of pushback here. I'm happy to relook at these, and maybe it's probably gonna take a little more digging to come up with a very accurate amount. I just felt very safe saying we're not covering more than it costs to provide these services right now. Perhaps what we could do is adopt these fees, and then over this next year, I analyze these and come back with a proposal, or even sooner, if that's your wish, to increase them to the appropriate amount.
Rodney, I'm sorry, I'll come right back to you, Councilwoman Levi. I have a quick question. Is there a cost to development services to implement the fees and then come back and change them 6 months or a year later? Or is that easy to do in all of your published materials? Because if it's pretty complex, we'd be better off just to go ahead and implement at a covering the cost standpoint. But is it really easy to make this change, or is it costly?
Mayor, I would say that it's probably pretty simple. Essentially, you adopt a resolution, which is in your packet tonight, and worked with Todd to draft that resolution. And then we take that resolution and we add it to all of our applications. Most of our applications right now are being done online, so that's a fairly simple adjustment. But I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable right now giving you an exact amount on every single one of these applications to cover the full cost without doing some comparison with Galena Consulting again. I did feel comfortable moving forward saying we're under the cost of service, but I would need to do some more research here.
Thank you. Councilwoman Levi.
Thank you, Mayor. For years, I've been talking about that growth has to pay for itself. And when I'm looking at these fees, and at the beginning of the report, it talked about growth paying for itself. But as was stated, that we're still coming in under, so growth really isn't paying for itself. And it's really our obligation to be protecting the taxpayers of the city of Nampa. And so one of the things I'm concerned about is, have we missed the big growth period because it's taken so long to come to this point? So when moving ahead, what does that look like as far as, is the growth going to be slowing down? Which kind of sets up for my next comment, is if we raise these fees to where they actually do pay for themselves, and we tie it to the index, will it not automatically make the adjustments each year? And so we're not going to have to be concerned about, oh, we're collecting too much or not enough. Is my understanding of that correct?
Well, tonight's tonight's discussion is not related to adopting an index for the future. Tonight's discussion is strictly related to adopting the fees as they've been stated. And I think that's a different discussion to tie to an index. What we found is that, I think it's the PPI Northwest Index is very, very high right now. And I think that's a whole different discussion. I think we need to tie it to something actual. So I think we would stay focused on this, but covering the actual cost of service is what
Right.
the goal is.
And looking ahead, that was the purpose of that statement and that question, is because I would, I'm not obviously giving testimony in the public hearing, but as a council person, looking at the proposed fees and knowing that they're not even covering the cost, I'm looking at this thinking, well, sure, we should adopt this, but they should even be higher so they're covering the cost minimum. And then looking ahead of that, if we're going to send this back to Galena, that they realize that we're going to tie this to the index. So I'm trying to be careful in my thought process, knowing we're to make a decision on this tonight, but what does that actually look like down the road? And so I just need a clarification.
So we'll come, and I know Todd would like to make a comment, but I would like to state that we are not going back to Galena tying this to an index. That's not what we're recommending. So I want to make sure what we're talking about, we're going to leave the indexing out of it at this point.
Right.
That was a comment regarding the indexing, but tonight's discussion is strictly around the fees that have been suggested, and then recognizing the cost of the fees aren't necessarily covering the cost. What I understand the council to be saying is that it's a different world today, and the expectation is that the new development actually covers the cost of new development, which is what they're saying. But I have a quick question for Todd, and I think, Todd, you had wanted to make a comment. And this is, can you remind me, this was a suggested public hearing, but not a required public hearing. Is that correct or incorrect?
Madam Mayor and council members, there's a public hearing that is required if you're going to increase your fees to essentially 105% of what they used to be, or a 5% increase. It's required to have a public hearing so both sides of the fee issue can comment. Or if you propose a new fee, it requires a public hearing. So some of these fees may not have required a public hearing, but a lot of them did because there's a significant increase. And that kind of relates to what I wanted to add. You have a public hearing so folks can comment on the proposed fees. As you mentioned, we're not talking about the index tonight, and I appreciate the sense that that makes. But at the same time, a public hearing could be required, would be required depending on the level of increase. So I don't know that you can just say we're going to index it. I think that's more of a direction to staff to keep an index in mind. The other thought there is, as has been stated, the requirement, not just a goal, but the requirement is you can't increase your fees to be a revenue generator. You need to cover your costs. That's what government needs to do, is cover its cost. So the potential challenge with an index is sometimes costs go up and down. Usually they tend to go more like this on a general uptick. But I think there should be some individualized look at your fees and a decision whether it does cover the cost. But, the direction to staff of, yeah, let's kind of keep an index in mind is fine. But I don't know that we can just put it in the resolution that way.
I think as we move forward, staff could actually compare the recommended increase to what the index would have been. That's an easy way to at least tie it to where that we're knowledgeable of what the index could have been if we were tied to an index. But I think to actual cost is a good way to look at it. So what I'm hearing, though, unless I'm hearing incorrectly, is council would prefer the increase actually cover the costs, which would mean we would come back. Okay, so Christy, yes, you are welcome to make a comment.
So Thank you, Mayor. Part of the conversation that we had as staff was doing this analysis was the fact that developers are not the only people paying these fees. You had two examples of just citizens tonight that were in here just asking for a simple rezone or an annexation. Or for planning and zoning, we often get over 3 dogs that need a conditional use permit or a temporary use permit or those kinds of things. Where if we were to increase the fees to a higher point than what we're proposing here, they may not be able to afford to do those types of things. And we would be actually deterring them from going through the correct process. So our thought was if we keep these at a across the board level for everybody, then that gives an average Joe citizen the opportunity to come in and get the types of permits that they need to get to be within our code. And so that kind of, it's hard to say, well, you're a developer, so we're going to charge you this much, and you're a homeowner, so we're only going to charge you this much. So that was kind of our reasoning for keeping it at a lower level.
Thank you for sharing that. That's
Yes.
really
That's
helpful.
good. Thank you.
So I have a question. When we are looking at our fees as a whole, Patrick and I we were talking about some of the building fees. So I'd like to see how this equates to planning and zoning. Some of the larger projects, absolutely, and this is building, not planning and zoning, but tell me if it's incorrect for planning and zoning. Some of the larger projects actually did cover their costs, but some of the smaller projects, we weren't covering our costs to just go out and do a second inspection or whatever, because that fee was so low, the actual cost was higher than the service. Do we have that happening in planning and zoning with some of our smaller projects? Is it, in other words, are the bigger projects the ones that are subsidizing and supporting planning and zoning, and then the smaller projects not?
Typically, we don't have to go back out for the smaller ones to do inspections later.
Right.
So once the hearing process is over, our expenses are pretty much taken care of. Our inspection process comes with final plats and development, and those fees are covered and have gone up according to this schedule. So that does affect the developers more than it does just a regular citizen. So our fees tend to end with the public hearing process.
Thank you. Okay, Councilwoman.
And Mayor,
Thank you. Okay, so Rodney, you go next, and then after that, Councilwoman Levi has a question, and then Councilman Haverfield is after that. Thank you, Rodney.
Sorry, can't see who's speaking there. Mayor, and just a little bit of addition to that is a reminder that we bring in roughly 200,000, a little less than 200,000 a year in fees. Our cost is much more than that to run our department for the year. And so to say that the large projects subsidize the small projects, we actually don't cover the expenses at all for the entire department. So it's subsidized through the full development services fees, but not through our planning and zoning permits and applications.
Because that's not all we do. Applications and public hearings are not all that the planning department does. We do more than just this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Those comments are really helpful.
Yep.
So hang around, I'm sure we'll have more questions.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilwoman Levi?
Thank you, Mayor. Christy, I appreciate your explanation on that. And so I'm, again, thinking ahead. So when a developer comes in to develop a subdivision, is each little fee broken down for them?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the comments you had made, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it, that it doesn't just apply to the developer, because sometimes people come in, they have 3 dogs, and they have to get this extra permit. So is it possible, for instance, as I'm looking through this list, we have the dog care, kennels, fence, the daycare, those type of things that I don't believe developers going to come in and need to apply for. Could we do something to keep those more in line so that the average person can come in and apply for those so it does work for them? And I was thinking about tonight, the gentleman that need it to hook up to city services. I'm thinking if they have to pay a fee to annex into the city in addition to the astronomical fee of hooking up, how does all that balance out, or can it be separated and balanced out?
Councilwoman Levi, yeah, I think that it could be. There's a couple things that we could probably break out with conditional use permits and whatnot. When we're doing something for a developer, we have the annexation application fee. We possibly have a conditional use permit fee, depending on what it is they're asking for. Then we have the plating fee, if that's what they're doing at that time. And all of those fees are charged separately. We don't absorb one fee into another application fee. Those are all charged separately. Typically with a citizen, the way conditional use permits work, you know, if somebody has 3 dogs on a regular subdivision lot, it's not over an acre, so then they have that lower amount at $234. Just to average those out, then we've said we are just going to charge one fee at $350 to cover some of those expenses that we're not covering now. And so we took it from 2 fees for less than an acre to over an acre, and we combined it into one average fee to cover everything. Still low, but seems to be manageable. Just as an example, we used to charge, well, we charge right now for appeals, $239 to go through the appeal process. If someone's coming in to appeal a decision that planning and zoning has made onto this board, it's that $239 fee for them to write a letter and get a hearing process literally has made people hyperventilate. So just an example of, you know, they want to go through this process, but having those higher fees sometimes deters them from doing so.
Thank you. Councilwoman Levi, did you have follow-up? Did you?
No, go ahead, thank
Okay,
you.
Councilman Haverfield.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. What I understand you're asking of us is an increase in the processing fees for planning and zoning applications, correct?
This item, yes,
Yes. It's nothing to do with building permits.
yet.
It's
That's
all the-
correct.
It's just the
That's the
entitlement
next one.
process. Oh, that's what's coming
The
next?
next, the
Okay.
next public hearing is
All right.
building fees.
Okay, so basically, it's the processing charge. And again, in my world, I do a lot of the upfront paperwork myself for my client. And that's what's presented to staff. Staff then uses that to prepare the paperwork that you have before you in most of the hearings at the planning and zoning level and here at city council. So, when you say growth paying for itself, this isn't a growth item, this is an entitlement process to determine whether they will go to the next step of filing for a building permit. So if you throw too many obstacles in the way, what you're doing, and this is what we've talked about in the past, is not to discourage growth, but to encourage it in a way that it's a partnership. So, and then there's these other items that are not really related to growth itself. It's more related to people coming in wanting to be annexed, but only to tap into the city services, which then we do as a city benefit from because they're being taxed for that service. So, I mean, we just need to be careful in understanding what you're being asked to approve, or, you know, the understanding of it. It's just a processing fee. It's our staff that's involved with putting that together. But it's a cooperative effort between staff and the design professionals or the developers working together and presenting something that meant to meet the requirements of our ordinances and our comp plan and those things. So it's a cooperative process. It's not all on the staff. A lot of it's brought in to mutually discuss through a conceptual plan review and other aspects of the process. So I just wanted to understand, it's basically the processing fee that we're being asked to adjust our numbers to be more in line with what other municipalities are charging.
And thank you, Councilman Haverfield, you bring up a good point. Conceptual plan review meetings and pre-application meetings are free. They're free to everybody. They're free to citizens, they're free to developers, they're free to everybody. So that's time spent towards an application that isn't garnering a fee. So just keep some of those things in mind.
Well, needless to say, providing the services is a responsibility of the city. And I guess so. I have a couple of thoughts, and I would like to ask Cliff a question, and that is, Cliff, ultimately, you are responsible for development services and the development services budget. And needless to say, staff has come forward with a recommendation. And with all the research and the work that's been done, my thought is to support that work. And so you get to be held accountable for that budget, right? And to ensure that the fees collected actually cover where we need to go long-term. Even though you're still getting your head around, I'm sure, the area, right, which is because you're over planning and zoning and building. And so you're over the budget, which is development services budget. So is this a proposal that you support?
So thank you, Mayor. I enjoy the spirited debate on this particular issue. It just shows how complex this really and truly is. If we just take the planning department and we look at all the services that they provide, there's a clear delineation in planning between strategic planning, or what we call long-range planning, and current planning. Current planning is the transactional costs to advance development. And it's certainly fair that there's an expectation that we recover the costs for moving that development forward. And I get a little uncomfortable when we talk about, honestly, when we talk about, should developers bear that or should citizens bear that? Costs should be assigned to where those costs are generated, whether that's a fence permit or whether that's a large subdivision. And we have to come up with a balance that makes sure that we're adequately funding all of that. Long-range and strategic planning, things like our comprehensive plan, are kind of outside of that transactional approach. And that's something that, some communities fund that particular aspect through general fund because they see it as a benefit to the city as a whole and not necessarily something that needs to be recovered as a cost of development. I am definitely in support of full cost recovery. I would like to, I guess if I had my druthers, we would spend some more time and do this. Whether we can hit perfection, no matter how far we kick the can down the road, I'm not sure. It's certainly the prerogative of council. We can adopt what's been recommended today with an agreement to revisit this and to make sure that our fees stay in line in the future. Or we can go back and spend a lot more time and analysis trying to come up with a strategic approach that we could come back in a one and done kind of presentation to council for your consideration. And that's completely up to you folks. I just don't think that we need to worry so much about whether it costs $75 for a fence permit here versus $50 in Meridian versus $125 in Boise. Those kind of things really, I don't think at the end of the day really matter. What we really need to make sure is that we're recovering the costs to the citizens for the services that we provide.
So Mayor, I'm one to put people on the spot. So you said it's up to us, but you're the expert. What would you recommend us do? One and done later, do more analysis, or do you think we need to would your recommendation to be to approve this as is and then make the changes as needed?
Mayor, Councilman, that would be my recommendation. My recommendation is that the longer we wait trying to come up with the perfect solution, the fewer fees we're collecting when we know that we're behind at this point. You have my word and the resources of my staff to make sure that we make this a priority and that we keep on top of it and we bring it forward. But I would recommend personally that we start with what we have and we build forward incrementally and better each time.
Mayor, if I may just follow up, and I agree, I think that is good. I am one that likes a time commitment, though. So if, this is a public hearing, but if we decide to go that route, which I think is a very good recommendation personally, that whether it's, I don't know what that is, 90 days, 6 months, or what, I would like a time span made on this if we move that direction, so. Part of the condition.
Okay, so as we talk about that, and this is a public hearing and we have one person signed up, so we will move to that very quickly. But, okay, so I see Patrick suggesting 6 months now, and that's okay.
Mayor, I would agree with that too. This is Rodney.
Thank you, Rodney. Cliff? Those are your guys. Do you agree?
Agreed.
Okay. I think you said something that is really important, Cliff, and I greatly appreciate it. And that was the reminder that future planning, there's not a fee associated with that. And many times that is covered through general fund because that's the funding of our city. That was a really key statement. Thank you for your comments. And so, Doug, we need to remember that because we have gone from funding planning and zoning 100% out of development fees. And so I think as we look to the future, we need to really consider what's realistic, if it can carry that. Obviously, there was a change in the downturn when things slow and you don't have the fees there. So I think we need to keep that in mind. So as we step into our budget, next budget cycle, that will be a really good discussion, Cliff, between you and Doug, I think.
And we have had the discussion with Patrick and Ed and I, and we will continue to have that discussion as it moves out, especially if the dynamics and the growth and the fees we receive change. It will be
Yeah.
ongoing.
Right, with Cliff, thank you. Okay, so this is a public hearing. We've had a tremendous amount of discussion ahead of the public hearing. However, I think it was beneficial. So I would like to open the public hearing, and I believe we have one person signed up, and that is Hubert Osborne. Is that correct?
Yes.
So Hubert, it's your turn, and I went ahead and let the discussion happen because I thought it may weigh into what you wanted to say. And thank you for sharing your address, or do we already have it? Okay, we're good to go.
You know where to find me.
We do know where to find you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. It's always a privilege to be able to express myself. My address is 4199 East Switzer Way here in Nampa. It's been an interesting discussion, and a couple of things were brought up that I hadn't really thought about, but I thought Mr. Long kind of put it in perspective. He said cost should cover cost. But he also said what is presented is a start. And I like the idea of a moratorium put on when Sir Rodney Ashby comes up with his second recommendations, because it is in sharp contrast to what Galena Consulting came up with. Now, she may be considering more costs, whatever. And I'm going to be as disorganized as the discussion was, I think, here.
We love you, Hubert.
But I have a feeling that the people that cause the cost should pay for their costs of doing business. Now, in my own personal opinion, by planning and zoning and at the direction of council and the mayor, it's way too complicated, so maybe that makes it too costly. But if it costs $500 to get a 3-dog kennel license. Maybe that's a bit out of whack, but the figure in here mentioned was that planning and zoning is short about $500,000 a year of paying their costs. And indexing, which I've championed for other departments, I think is a viable solution. If costs go down, indexing goes down. But the mayor and legal have said that can't be part of this discussion. So my recommendation, for what it's worth, is that you pass this with a moratorium on having an additional study and come back in 6 months and go from there. Without being insulting, I'll just sit down. Thank you.
Mayor Kling, I have a question for Hubert.
Yes.
Hubert, when you said pass it, are you referring to deny this fee proposal until 6 months after a new study?
Well, as I interpret the mayor's suggestions, it is pass it or nothing. And I would like to see some increases, even though I do not think they're adequate.
Okay, thank you.
So I would encourage you to pass it and somehow attach a trailer on it that would require this to be brought back before council with additional studies.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Hubert.
Randy, don't you want to charge me a bit?
No, I know better than to pat the bear on the back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hubert.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, not for you, Hubert. For legal, should I do it now or wait?
Well, we are in a public hearing, so I'd like to finish the public
Okay.
hearing, and then we could come back and go to our discussion. So at this time, we do not have anyone else signed up to testify tonight. So the question is there anyone here in the audience that would like to speak this evening? I'm kind of looking out there at Sharon, just in case, right? Okay, I don't see anyone at this time that is interested in testifying that didn't get signed up. Is that correct? Okay, seeing none, I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so at this
Aye.
time, Councilman Rodriguez.
Thank you. Todd, we're talking about indexing, but what does Idaho state statute say about indexing?
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Rodriguez, so first part, we're talking about indexing, but that's not what we're
That's correct.
set for tonight.
Right.
The fee statute doesn't address indexing. What it does say is that if you're going to increase the fee more than 5%, you have to have a public hearing. So if you were to index it and it resulted in something that would require a public hearing, you couldn't automatically do it. And I think for transparency purposes as well, you want to pass your fees by resolution, and they are what they are. And then you change them. That way the public can go to the resolution and say, okay, my fee is $500 for a conditional use permit. They don't have to keep track of over how many years is, what's the fee. And but I think that's a little more maybe practice advice, but I think the direction to staff is pretty clear. And you want costs to cover costs, and if that's considering an index while you do that, great. The legal backstop is that public hearing. If you do something that requires a public hearing, it can't be automatic. You have to put it out in front of the public, let the public comment, and then make your decision.
So doesn't Idaho statute prohibit us from doing just that? It says within 5 years, right? Or can we do it at any year we want? Don't we prohibit it by time?
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Rodriguez, as far as adopting a fee increase?
No, for indexing, for changing it, for increasing it after we adopt,
No?
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Rodriguez, I don't think so. I mean, as far as the fee statute goes, it just requires a public hearing based on the increase. It
Okay, all right.
doesn't put a limitation on time.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. All right, thank you.
Okay. So based on our discussion today, I think there is an understanding, and please, council, correct me if I'm wrong, there's an understanding that we want the actual cost of service to cover the cost of service. We do understand that the planning and zoning budget, it will not totally be covered by cost of service because some of the future planning does not have any fee associated with it, which is a different responsibility. But what we are talking about is having an actual process that is the current land use and that applications and all that comes through, we're looking to see that ultimately the cost of service cover that. But as recommended by Cliff, the suggestion was that we consider supporting the proposal of the department tonight so that we can go ahead and implement and get started with the fee increases, and then to come back and in the next 6 months to conduct an analysis and then come back with a future recommendation. Is
Mayor,
that-
so move
okay.
it as you just stated.
Okay. Second. It's been moved and seconded.
I have a further question for staff. I would have hoped to have gotten that in before the motion, but the question I have is overhead for purchase of signs, placement of signs, is that covered underneath these expenses? Or are they being pushed back onto the developer?
Mayor and council, the cost of producing these signs was incorporated into that overhead estimate for us. So you could include that as part of the fee that we have proposed. But again, not the entire budget for the city of, or the planning and zoning department is not covered by fees. And so some of that is subsidized, some of the work we do. But I would say that the fees could probably be included in that overhead.
Well, the whole intent of this request is to try to get us to the point where the cost of our services that we're providing is covered by the developer coming in and asking for the project to be reviewed and approved. Correct?
So in the future, as we come back, what we need to do is ensure that the answer to your question, that we've covered the cost of that. And I think that's what you're saying, as we move forward, that's what you want to see.
Yeah. Because I've seen it done in other jurisdictions where the developer pays and posts the signs themselves. But if we're doing that as a city, are we charging them to do that? Or, again, where does that fall? And is that's still yet to be determined? The motion didn't include a date certain that we would have them come back, so.
Oh, yes, it did.
It did.
Mayor stated 6 months.
Okay, you did state that?
I did.
Okay.
But I would like to go back. Could we put the motion on the screen?
You bet. And Mayor, just a little bit of clarification here. I need to know whether you are recommending what the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended, or excuse me, approving what the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended, or whether you're approving this first one that didn't include that $5 increment adjustment.
I think what I'm recommending is whatever staff has recommended. And it's the maximum, which one is the higher one?
The higher one is this one, because it just rounds up for all the fees to the nearest $5 increment.
That would be my motion, Mayor.
Okay. So, and then if we could also include this, to sign the resolution to adopt the new, because we've got to authorize the mayor to sign the resolution. And so we would, it needs to follow as stated on here, which is, and I'll let you read that, Darla, if you don't mind, and then also authorize me to sign the resolution. And just to clarify the motion and then under discussion, is that okay if I come back to you, Councilwoman? Okay. So let's re-clarify the motion. Darla?
I move to approve the fee schedule resolution as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission to round all fee calculations up to the nearest 5 increment and as otherwise proposed in the staff report. And that we come back for discussion for further fee discussion within 6 months and then authorize the mayor to sign the resolution. Is that it?
Second.
Question?
Okay, it's
So-
been moved and seconded. Councilwoman Mucci?
Thanks, Mayor. Todd, this covers everything that you said it needed to cover, right? Based on this being a public hearing, even with the $5 increment, all of that's fine?
So if that recommendation said to the nearest $5, I didn't take that to mean $5 up. My recommendation, I think, Mayor and Council, would be to go with what staff's proposed. If we're talking about a few dollars increase here or there, let that be covered in your study. A little bit of concern is that we've proposed a certain level of fee, and we have a hearing on that, those proposed levels of fees. It's kind of like the budget. If you go higher than what's proposed, then, you know, you could approve what's proposed or go lower, but I have a little more concern from a due process standpoint if you go above what was proposed. So
Good question.
you can again carry that forward to staff. Staff, if there's some kind of processing good reason to have it at $5 increments, do that when you have your proposed fees coming forward.
We need to amend the motion then.
So can I ask a question? Why is this motion really, really long? And the last motion just says to approve whatever the planning and zoning, because that doesn't make any sense. That we would,
Yeah.
that we've got two motions that are very, very different.
Mayor, I just put that last one in after the commission recommended it. And I felt like the rest of this, although this was the legal description in the newspaper and in the notice, I just felt like it was unnecessary. And so, sorry, I apologize for that. I should have removed all of that in this motion. But it's essentially the same as what's stated on the next motion. You would just take out that $5 increment.
So Mayor, I so amend my motion that it is stated as previously stated, except we will delete the nearest $5 increment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I believe we do have the clarity. Is there are there any questions, any confusions?
Mayor Kling.
Discussion, yes?
Just to be clear then, the information provided in our packet of the application cost today, the estimated cost, proposed fee, those are as in our packet. Nothing changed with this series of motions that were made.
Correct.
It's basically what's in our packet.
That's correct.
All right,
It's
thank you.
really as presented. Yes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
And Brunner?
Yes.
Could I ask that we go ahead and get through this next one? I think we can go through very quickly. So we're going to move to 6.6 and then we're going to take a break. And no, he authorized the mayor to sign the resolution in his motion. No, we don't have to read a resolution. So this is, 6.6 is an action item. This is a public hearing for proposed amendments to building fees under Title IV building regulations. And it looks like we have 3 different action items. Can these all be combined into one, or to sign the resolution? The first reading of ordinance. So this isn't ordinance for amendments, so we will read the ordinance and then we will authorize the summary of publication. Okay. So Patrick, walk us through it.
Patrick, you get a short one, right?
I can make it super sweet, short and sweet. Mayor and council, thanks for having me. I'm hope you are all warmed up for this one. So anyway, we every 2 or 3 years since I've been here, since 2013, we've been having Ann Westcott go over our fees, and she's done the fire fees, the planning fees, and the building fees. So what we've done is we've gone through a fee study. We've recognized that we don't need to significantly change commercial building permit fees because those are paying for themselves, and anything over $5 million is paying a little more. That said, there is a goal of having a rainy day fund or a reserve fund, and so those excess fees go into that reserve fund. So what we really concentrated on is just the last time we had changed our hourly rate was in 2004. And the reason we had not come before council all these years is because the advice of our consultant was, well, your other fees are paying for everything else. There's really no need to go to council, except that we were thinking, what happens when we're down to just the small projects and we don't have a lot of big projects to pay our way? So what we've done is we've increased our hourly rates for miscellaneous services from $45 an hour to $72 an hour, and that's a fully loaded salary, including what we pay to the city for where we reside in the Nampa Development Services Building. We also pay for about between $300,000 and $400,000 for the engineering department to do plan review fees, and there's other fees that we pay to pay our way. So that $72 an hour, we took that on all the small miscellaneous items, and we raised that and did an estimate on how many hours it would take to do a reinspection. So we increased reinspection fees from $45 for reinspection to $55. That includes the clerical costs and includes having an inspector go back out. We consolidated and increased base fees for plumbing, mechanical, and electrical permits. The base fees were low compared to other jurisdictions, and it was not covering what it took to go out there and do a rough inspection and a final inspection and subsequent re-inspections, because you get a free re-inspection for your rough and a free re-inspection for your final, or the clerical costs. And then we increased the miscellaneous fees, which is mostly re-inspection fees for plumbing, mechanical, electrical fees, and we added some clarification notes as well. So let me go to the next page. So here's our fee schedule. So, sorry. So basically, the top valuation tables have not changed. Those are everything that's changed has been struck out, and then the old fees, and then we put the new fee. So if you go down to miscellaneous fees, we've changed our hourly rate. We've changed our reinspection fee. Inspections not covered by active permit. That's where somebody starts work without a permit, or we've gone out to look at a moved-on house and we're actually going out and investigating. And so we'll actually charge those fees. And then we have hourly rate for plan review or other services. If somebody comes in and they need to revise their plans, then we will charge them an hourly rate. You get a second plan review, but the third plan review you have to pay for. The other thing we changed is we used to have a two-tier plan review fee for residential, but really whether the house is 1,000 square foot or over 2,500 square foot, it takes about the same amount of time to look at it. So we just basically, for smaller houses under 2,500 square foot, we weren't taking in enough fee to perform the plan review. And then we have plan review revisions, $72 an hour, 1 hour minimum, clerical administrative fees for reactivation of expired permits, voiding permits, processing refunds, and processing of plan review modifications. And then the same thing for our miscellaneous fees here for manufactured, mobile, and modular homes. Let's see here, let's go to the next page. And we only have one more page, I think, here. We struck plumbing fees for some reason, were separate from mechanical and electrical, but they were identical, so we got rid of them, and we consolidated plumbing, mechanical, and electrical fees all in one table. And all we've really done is we've raised the base fees for residential subcontractor fees. We've raised the fees for a 2,000 square foot or less dwelling to 180, and a 2,000 or more square foot dwelling to 325. And then we have miscellaneous fees down here where we're doing, we would have a base fee, and then somebody would be putting in a new sewer line. Well, we were charging a base fee of $26 and then $6 for the sewer line, and that's for two inspections minimum. And it just wasn't paying, it's not capturing the cost. And that's, it's the same as you go down, and I can go into more detail. And then we got rid of some repetitive fees that are up in the miscellaneous fee column anyway, so it didn't make sense to keep reiterating all these. So that, in essence, is what we're doing for fees. And then I have a quick comparison table that's in your packet. And as you can see, we have no major changes to new residential, new commercial, residential remodels, et cetera. All the fees were really in electrical, mechanical, and plumbing fees and our hourly rates as you go through. So you'll see that the electrical permits have changed. And we're pretty close to between what Boise and Meridian is. We're a little higher on the home fees for new homes. But this is what it takes to do those inspections and to do the clerical work to process those permits.
Mayor, are you still?
Oh, and the same thing for plumbing and mechanical, it's pretty much just the same as we go through there. And then we have after-hours inspection, re-inspection fees, clerical administrative fee, just an hourly rate, and a clerical administrative fee for refunds. We used to charge, in the subsequent ordinance change, we were charging 20% to re-up a permit. The problem is if you had, a $10,000 permit, we were charging $2,500 to reinstate your permit, and it made more sense just to charge an hourly fee, and we'll just, if it takes us a half hour to extend your permit, that's better than really dinging people. And it's something that, since it's in the ordinance, we just need to get rid of it because it was almost a penalty. And it's hard because if it's an ordinance, there wasn't a way for me to waive it. So that's why we've gone to more hourly fees instead of the more, I guess, restrictive thing. So, and that's all I had. I'll stand for any questions.
So Mayor, if I may, I'm just curious, you said consulting recommended you not bring this up. So how long ago has it been since this has even been discussed? I'm not remembering my timeline. But
I've been a part of, this is probably our fourth fee study we've done since I've been here.
You've been here since when?
2013.
So it has been done in the last.
Yeah, every 2 to 3 years we've done one.
Okay. You said they did not recommend you.
Just because we had been, as of probably in the last 5 to 7 years, we've been really running a surplus. And we talked about maybe reducing the amount of commercial fees. The problem with that is it's a slippery slope as the larger projects drop away and we're down to just a tenant improvement or a small 10,000 square foot warehouse building. Those pay for themselves.
Mayor, if I
and
may
just pay for
follow up.
themselves.
So what would be your and Cliff's recommendation here? I'm back to the timeline again. How often to do this in the future?
We look at it the goal is to look at it every 2 years.
2 years.
And I think we'll probably have a discussion now that Cliff is with us and we have conjoined planning, zoning, and building for a while there, we were doing separate fee studies. Now we have to start doing them together, and we really need to analyze the fee studies and how they relate to an overall budget for development services. So it's really a thornier question. I think in the next year, for this next coming up budget, we're going to want to take all the information from the fee studies, really take a hard look at our FY23 budget, and come up with a plan that's sustainable. And then, obviously, whenever we have either when we're following the growth curve up, we need to do it every 2 years. And if we're following the growth curve down, we may even need to do it every year if things drop off, just so that we're sure that we're taking in the fees we need to cover expenses.
Mayor, that'd be my recommendation that just not to have a set 2 year, but if things are changing,
Correct.
of course, with your and Cliff's recommendation that we do that, immediately or as soon
The
as.
difference is, we have Cliff here now overseeing development services. We do, as Patrick just stated it very well, we need to consolidate this together. We need to do it on an annual basis, semi-annual basis. It depends on the market. And what you don't want to do is spend time and money on a study that you can pretty well gauge doesn't need to change, because it's time consuming and it's costly. And so I think we need to, with guidance, this is part of an operational side, is that we need to trust our leadership to make sure it gets done. So that's important. And then working with Doug. And then Doug Racy?
I do have a question. Patrick, on the costs you've shown up there, you indicated the fees are full labor costs. Is there any other cost being factored into the fully loaded calculation you came up with? Fuel, car, so forth?
Mayor and Doug, Racine, what we're looking at is fully loaded costs of our budget, our operational budget, not our expenses, but we take our operational budget, divide by how many people we have.
Okay.
And that's how much, it's just very simple math.
Okay.
But it's not, let's say that we're thinking our expenses might be over what our budget is. We aren't taking in some type of projection above what we're actually going to be expending.
Okay. I support the direction they're going. I think we could partner with Cliff down the road to do a more thorough analysis of the costs and the fully loaded and say what might it look like in the future. But I support where they're going right now.
And one thing that Patrick and I talked about and why this was important was that, as he said at the beginning, that the larger commercial projects are covering their cost. Those fees are in line. It was the small stuff that really wasn't, and especially if we go through a downturn and you don't have the big development coming in and you're relying on those fees, it's imperative that the cost of those smaller fees actually cover the cost of doing business. And I think you've made good strides in getting us to where we need to be on that, and I appreciate that effort. So thank you. That is awesome. Okay, so this was the staff report. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, Mayor.
Are we good? Okay, so unless there are further questions, I'd like to move.
Just
Go
one.
ahead. Yes?
Just one. The recommendations that you're advancing to us, have you had any outside input from the local home builders association, development community so is this something that they've been involved with or excluded from?
Mayor and Councilman Haverfield, we've shared this with the Home Builders Association. We basically put a notice out that we're going to have an ordinance change. Both the public notice, plus we've sent the ordinance and the fees to the Snake River, American Institute of Architects, engineering associations, Associated General Contractors, et cetera. So we send all that out. And then we've also taken this in front of our board, which has 2 Snake River contractors on it, which is our Building and Fire Code Advisory and Appeals Board. And so we took that to them earlier this month, and they have approved that and recommended this to council. And I forgot to say that earlier, so thanks for the question.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that kind of information had been broadcast so that you could get some feedback rather than just being a slap in the face, here's another extra fee that you're going to have to pay. That's usually the way it comes back to some of us, but anyway, thanks.
Thank you. We'll have you come back if we have
Okay.
another question. So this is a public hearing, and we have one person signed up to testify, and that is Hubert Osborne. And so, thank you, Hubert, for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, my name is Hubert Osborne. My wife and I reside at 4199 East Switzer Way. It's amazing how sensible this discussion has become. And I thank Patrick for running a ship that does not require subsidy. There's one comment I wanted to make in addition to supporting what he has presented, and that is in the ordinance, there's a suggested change which he did not mention, but the change in wording in 4-2-4 I fully support, and I think it will eliminate some of the builders applying for a $150,000 home permit and selling it for $450,000 before it's finished. They should be paying more in fees if they're worth more money than $150,000. So, thank you.
Mayor, Hubert, can you just read that, what you just said? That Did you have it before you-
4-2-4, and it, the additions, it strikes, I'll read it as,
with the strikes.
yeah, the determination of valuation for all construction shall be established by the actual project cost, including all related site improvement and building costs. And then the building value submitted by the applicant at the time of permit application shall be used to determine the initial permit cost. The original building costs submitted at time of application will be compared to final building cost at the time of,
Substantial completion, yeah.
yeah, my printer ran out of ink there. So. But by submitting a lower building valuation, by my hillbilly math, sometimes they were being undercharged like $1,000 on their building permit. So
Thanks.
that should take care of it. Thank you.
It finishes out saying additional building value will be assessed as the final building value with payment of all additional permit fees due prior to the issuance of the certificate of completion or certificate of occupancy. Thank you, Hubert, for bringing that forward. Okay, is there, that Hubert is the only one that was signed up for the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on behalf of this particular issue? Seeing none, you're welcome to.
Mayor and council, Hubert's comments are on the second action item, which is the ordinance. They are not in, that, I have another presentation for that to bring up to speed on the ordinance changes as they relate to the fee schedule. So this action item is just for the resolution for the fee schedule.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing, and if there's no one else signed up to testify, I would stand for a motion to close public hearing.
Moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
So we have a couple different motions, as Patrick just brought forward. The first motion, as we close, well, I guess before we move to that, is there any further discussion of the council? Okay, I will walk through what the action items are. So the first one is to authorize the mayor to sign the resolution, which does not need to be read. And this is for the revised building permit fee schedule based on what has been presented. And that would be passed under suspension of rules and implemented on March 1, 2022 as recommended by the Nampa Building and Fire Code Advisory Appeal. So we will act on, although do we need a suspension of rules? That shouldn't be in there. Right, so we would just, a resolution does not need to be passed under suspension of rules. But so we would authorize the mayor to sign the resolution for the revised building permit fee schedule and implemented on March 1, 2022 as recommended by the Nampa Building and Fire Code Advisory and Appeals Board would be the action item. If there's so moved. Thank you, it's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Bruner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Mucci?
Yes.
So our second action item, we're actually going to do B and C together. So it is the first reading of ordinance amendments related to the building fees under Title IV Building Fee Regulations. And this would be passed under suspension of rules. And we would also authorize the summary of publication for the preceding ordinance. We'll do that together. So thank you for reading our ordinance.
An ordinance enacted by the Nampa City Council amending Title IV, Chapters 1 and 2 of the Nampa City Code, amending Section 4-1-3 regarding fee refunds, amending Section 4-1-4 regarding fees for service, and the fee schedule, amending Section 4-1-5 regarding penalties and violations, amending Section 4-1-9, the fee for permit reactivation, amending Section 4-1-10 regarding denial of permits, amending Section 4-2-4 regarding determination of building value, providing for severability, and repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, and parts thereof in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
And again, the motion would be to approve the ordinance as read and authorize a summary of publication and passed under suspension of rules.
Mayor,
Yes.
what is the significance of the March 1st date?
It's just for implementation, that it would be implemented. That means that on March 1, it would be on our website, and the fees would be actually due beginning March 1. So it's clarifying when these would take effect.
But why March 1st, not beginning immediately when this is passed?
Well, they have to get them posted. Go ahead, Patrick, I'll let you answer.
Mayor and Councilwoman Levi, it's going to take that long to have the fees actually entered and tested in our permit software, both on our external portal and our internal portal. And it'd be the same for planning and zoning. We have to set it up, and then we have to test it to make sure they fire correctly.
Thank you.
It's been, well, I guess, did we have a motion? Yes, we did. It was moved and seconded. This is discussion? I think it was. Was it moved? I read it. Okay. Is there a motion?
Victor's gonna.
I'll do it.
Thank you, Victor.
So moved.
Thank you. With the authorizing the summary of publication under suspension of rules.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Second.
Okay.
There you go.
It's been moved and seconded. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Mucci,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Hammerfield,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Brunner,
Yes.
and Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. So we're going to take a short break, and I'd like to come back at 5 till 9 if we can, and so we can wrap up, hopefully by 9:30. Thank you. Okay, short break. Okay, we're going to start with action item 5.3, and this is to authorize notice of intent to award a sole source contract with TDS Communications for fiber and broadband services. And I'd like to ask the council if you would like for Jeff to come forward and talk about this.
So move.
Okay? It's
Not for
been,
Jeff to come up, I'm making a motion on.
right. I didn't see Jeff move very far. I think we got, thank you.
He knows me well enough.
Yes, it's been moved and seconded that we authorize the notice of intent. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Machi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes?
Haverfield?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Item 5.4 is an action item to authorize the mayor to sign the First Amendment of Professional Services contract with Safe Built for plan review and building inspection services for the increase of the contract amount not to exceed $100,000 and the extension of the contract duration to September 30, 2022. This is approved by legal, and it is in the 22 Development Services budget. And I will just say that this has come before council before. The reason it's back, we'll see if they have questions after this, but the reason it's back is because Patrick has been unable to hire someone to do the work. And rather than coming again with another short-term time frame, he would like the authorization based on what's in the budget just to extend over the year, pending the hire of the.
So move.
Yeah.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Need to hire a
Rodriguez?
good architect.
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes?
Machi?
Yes.
And Brunner?
Yes.
Item 5.5 is an action item to authorize the Public Works Director to sign the Aclara One software upgrade project agreement with Aclara Technologies in the amount of $79,859.50. This is approved by legal and approved in the FY22 budget.
Mayor, I guess I have a couple.
Okay, and Matt Turner, I believe, was online earlier. Is he still online? Okay.
I am, madam.
Good evening. Okay.
So is this, sounds like, how long is this supposed to last normally? We're already replacing items? I thought this was a new installation last few years.
No, what had happened is the company that Aclara, they are upgrading their system. So currently we use what they call the NCC Star. That is being retired and it is moving to what is being called Aclara One. So it's an upgraded system. We are not changing companies. It is just they're retiring the system that we're currently using, and all former customers and new customers are being moved to the Aclara One so we can continue service.
So how long have we been using the previous?
We have been on the NCC since first implementation in 2015, the initial concept, and we are about 76%, I believe it was, completed as of right now. Throughout the whole thing.
And what would be the norm for updating these type of systems? And I guess Daniel's coming up to educate me. Thank you.
Mayor, Councilman Brunner, I would point out that this is not equipment upgrade, this is just software.
Okay, so we're just paying for the software.
The software is being updated, the equipment is still the same, we're not having to change out the meter transmission units or anything like that. This is just strictly a software upgrade.
And software I know happens
Correct.
frequently. Okay, I couldn't understand the hardware. Okay, thanks for clarifying.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this item? Would you like a presentation from Matt, or what is the will of the council?
Make a motion to authorize the request as it's presented to us in our packet.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Machi?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes?
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Item 5.6 is an action item, and this is to authorize the mayor and the Public Works Director to sign a task order with Brown and Caldwell for fiscal year 2022 Environmental Compliance Division Technical Support Consultant Services in the amount of $171,233, time and materials not to exceed, and as approved in the FY22 budget.
So moved.
Mayor, I have a question on this. Do we have someone online, or is someone from Brown
Is
Caldwell
Evan
or
on?
Tom, or Nate or Tom?
Evan Jenkins, I think maybe on. Evan?
Okay.
Mayor, council,
So
this is Evan Jenkins.
Is this Darrell Brunner. So is this normal? I figured it's about $142 an hour. Is that our normal, what our normal fee has been?
Yes, it kind of varies on the workload that we have for the scope of work. It's less this year than what we had for FY21.
Okay, and then I'm just curious in comparisons, I know you guys do so much work for us, but like with the wastewater, I guess Nate and Tom maybe are not on. Is this comparable? Does anybody know what, as far as what we're paying for consulting services for the wastewater?
Mayor, Councilman Brunner, as we're looking at our hourly rates, the way that our consultant contracts are set up is they are based on the hourly rates of the employees that are actually doing the work. So if we have an employee that is doing work on the wastewater side and one that's doing work on the, if it's the same person, we're paying the same rate in both places. And we review those typically annually. With those consultant contracts, they submit their hourly rates, we review those and review and approve or ask questions
And I think
if
you know,
appropriate.
understand what I'm trying to get at. Is this bottom line, is this the normal rate that we would pay for something that, whether we're using Brown and Caldwell or someone else, this is the normal consulting rate for this type of work?
Mayor, Councilman Brunner, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any further discussion or questions? I believe we had our motion. Roll call?
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Munchy?
Yes.
And Haverfield?
Yes.
Item 5.7 is an approval of the City of Nampa and the Nampa Fire Protection District intergovernmental agreement for collection and distribution of impact fees. This was reviewed by legal. Would you like a presentation from Patrick on this?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I just point out a couple of things. This does provide for a district liaison to the advisory committee, the Impact Fee Advisory Committee. They get notice, they get to participate, but it's a non-voting position. And then the other thing I wanted to just point out is we have the impact fee improvement plan in place, but to amend that in the future regarding fire impact fees, it requires both the district and the city to agree.
To amend, if we make a change to the allocation and how those impact fees are used, correct?
The capital improvement plan.
Right. Which we're just in the process right now of approving our capital improvement plan, and we did have our ex officio member present from the fire district for that, as they have been in the past. But thank you for bringing that forward. I appreciate it. Okay. Is there any further clarification or questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Munchy?
Yes.
And Brunner?
Yes.
Item 5.8 is an action item. It is the first reading of ordinance for amendments to the Title IV, Chapter 7, International Fire Code, adopting the 2018 Fire Code with amendments. After being read, this is requested to pass under suspension of rules, and 5.9 is authorizing the summary of publication for the preceding ordinance, that we could do all in one motion.
An ordinance enacted by the Nampa City Council amending Title IV, Chapter 7 of the Nampa City Code, amending Section 4-7-1 pertaining to the Fire Code and adopting International Fire Code 2018 edition, amending Section 4-7-2, designating amendments to the adopted Fire Code, amending Section 4-7-3 pertaining to fees for services, repealing Title III, Chapter 6, Section 361 of the Nampa City Code pertaining to open burning, and repealing Title V, Chapter 11 of the Nampa City Code pertaining to fireworks, providing for severability and repealing all ordinances, resolutions, and orders and parts thereof in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date.
Make a motion to pass the ordinance as read under suspension of rules. and also to authorize the summary of publication.
Thank you. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
And Haverfield.
Yes.
As noted, we discussed 510 earlier, so we'll move to 511 on the agenda. This is an action item to authorize the Mayor and Public Works Director to sign a contract for the irrigation pump station control system upgrades for FY22 project with Advanced Control Systems in the amount of $157,107, and this is approved in the FY22 budget.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mucci?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And Brunner.
Yes.
Item 512 is an action item. This is authorizing engineering staff to proceed with negotiations for right-of-way acquisition required to construct the Franklin Road and Birch Lane roundabout up to the estimated amount of $560,000. It is approved in the FY22 budget. Why does it feel like we did this last meeting, or is it just that we discussed it? We didn't do it. It's just so fresh in my mind. It's like we did it yesterday. So it's just from discussions. Okay. Are there any questions regarding this? This is authorizing the negotiations as a whole for this project, not specific parcels, up to that authorized budget for this particular roundabout, and it is approved in the FY22 budget.
Mayor, Jeff, or Daniel's doing this one too? Thanks. So I know it's not specific properties, but we're just talking about all four corners here.
There are 8 properties
There are
that
8 properties, okay.
that we will need to make acquisition on. And so we've have some of the appraisals already in, and based on those, we've estimated what the full needs will be for the project. That amount, that $560,000 is the request to purchase up to that amount.
Are you seeing or expecting any resistance as we did somewhat on the, I won't name the name, but on the Lake Low Midland project?
We have had some discussions with some of the property owners. At this point, I have not, the couple that I have personally talked to have not been resistant of that nature. So I don't anticipate, but that doesn't mean there won't be.
Well, I think you've proven yourself with these folks who are from the Lake Low, so keep going out and talking to those folks. Will you?
Mayor,
Yes.
because it's a roundabout, so moved. You were waiting for it.
Yep.
I want to make sure you made that motion on your last night.
Exactly.
Hasn't had a second yet, though, Randy. Would you like to second that?
Only if it's near Jean's house.
I told you I'll move right near it.
She has so many houses, they're all near.
Yeah, so many.
Was there an official second to the motion?
Me.
Me neither.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
My guess is there are a lot of people that are going to be excited to get this done, to move the traffic, so they'll be thrilled. It has been moved and seconded to move forward with this. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Ah, you go.
Levi?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes, an excited yes, yes.
And Mucci.
Yes.
Control yourself.
We're going to
At
miss you.
9:15, I'm done controlling myself.
Okay, 5 minutes, we better hurry. Okay, 513 is an action item. This is to amend the approved agreements for the Idaho Opportunity Fund with the Idaho Department of Commerce and Stowe Company for funding from the state of Idaho to increase, with an increase of $200,000.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we covered this topic in the meeting in November 1st. This is an agreement that was approved through the state to the city that then goes to the recipient company, which is Stowe. Last Monday, we discussed incentives. This is one of the incentives that comes through the state. It is state funds. It is a program that is not through general funds. It is earmarked for this purpose to help create infrastructure for companies that are coming to Idaho or who are expanding. Nampa is lucky enough to be able to utilize those funds because they can go elsewhere in the state. And so Stowe has seen huge increase in their costs of infrastructure. They were quoted for bringing power from Idaho Power out to the site at just over $1 million in the spring when they did their site visit. The estimate now is $3.4 million to bring the power that's needed. And that's due to supply chain constraints that we've seen all through construction. And so they've asked for an increase through the state funds to amend that agreement to $200,000. In the next 8 years, Stowe will bring in just over $10 million in tax revenue to the city. So this is a large company that will contribute to our community.
And a very small percentage of the actual costs that they're going to incur to
Yes.
come here. So are there any questions?
Mayor Kling?
Yes.
So, Robin, we'll be talking about this tomorrow morning, it sounds like, as far as the NDC's participation. Is any of this of concern to them as far as they move forward with these additional costs? Are they starting to rethink any of their positions at this point?
Mayor, Councilman Haverfield, yes, this has been the holdup of a purchase sale agreement. So we've been working through all these infrastructure costs that we're looking at utilities that were anticipated in the spring at $4 million and now they're 9.4. So huge increase in our construction costs. And so they would love to be over here. They would love to have a West Coast presence and have those jobs be here in Nampa. And so we're just looking at different ways that we can creatively help that infrastructure get put in place. Also working with the other developers in the area that they share the costs as well. So we'll be talking about that with NDC tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
What is the will of the council?
Make a motion to amend the approved agreements for the Idaho Opportunity Fund as presented to us.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I wanted to get one more gaff in.
Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Machi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Bruner?
Yes.
And Haverfield?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Item 514 is an action item. This is to authorize the mayor to sign a development agreement for a 10-foot pathway along Happy Valley Road on behalf of the city. And this has been reviewed and approved by legal.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Bruner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Machi?
Yes.
And Haverfield?
Yes.
Item 515 is an action item. This is to authorize the mayor and the public works director to sign a task order with JUB Engineers to provide design services for the Cherry Lane and 11th Avenue North Pipeline Project in the amount of $67,260, time and materials not to exceed, and as approved in the FY22 budget.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Machi?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And Bruner?
Yes.
So item 516 is actually a motion to approve a waiver to allow a beer and wine license within 300 feet of a church for County Line Wine located at 14095 Nana Lane, Nampa. So who's going to bring this forward as far as the discussion on this one? Rick, you're on.
I'll defer to you. You
Yeah.
can confirm the process. So just a reminder that the state statute generally has a prohibition on the business serving alcohol within 300 feet, but the state also grants to the locality the authority to grant a waiver. So this applicant sought that, already has secured the state license, has secured a county license, and has secured a letter from the pastor of the Rock Christian Missionary Alliance Church located within 300 feet that does not object to them obtaining the license. There was a question whether they required a conditional use permit, and I could defer to Christy, who spoke with the applicant to confirm that they do not require a CUP.
And actually, I don't know if we need a report
If
on
you
it
need a
unless the
report.
council would like it. Council, when I looked at this location, actually, you may remember if you saw the location in your packet, this is an existing location that's a wedding venue, that it's not new. It is, that it's an existing property, they're just applying for the license. And it's unusual that the county and the state actually approve it before we do. But in this case, they actually did move forward because of the enclosed letter from the church nearby, because this has been at this location for some time. So would you like to hear from, nope,
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve a waiver to allow beer and wine license within 300 feet of a church for 29 Wine, located at 14095 Nana Lane.
I'll second that.
it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I would
It's
have
the
made a, I
very-
would have made a joke, but no.
Okay, okay.
I'm not driving through roundabouts after I visit.
No, yeah. You wineaholic.
Which way?
Roll call.
Brunner,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Haverfield,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Machi.
So that concludes the new business portion. We've gone through the public hearing portion. What we have left tonight is unfinished business, and it looks like we have 5 readings of ordinance. And so we'll start with number 171 on the agenda, and this is the first reading of ordinance for annexation and zoning to RS6 and a development agreement at 0 East Locust Lane, a small portion of 0 Robinson Road, and 4417 South Happy Valley Road. This is for Harvest Creek subdivision for Hayden Homes and representing multiple property owners. And it is requested to pass under suspension of rules.
An ordinance of the City of Nampa, Idaho, determining that certain lands commonly known as 0 East Locust Lane, a small portion of 0 Robinson Road, 0 and 4417 South Happy Valley Road, comprising approximately 76.2 acres, more or less, lay contiguous to the limits of the City of Nampa, Canyon County, State of Idaho, and that said land should be annexed into the City of Nampa and zoned RS6, declaring said lands by proper legal description as described below to be part of the City of Nampa, determining that said annexation and zoning are in the best interest of the public and consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city, directing the city engineer and planning and zoning director to add said property to the official maps of the City of Nampa and to designate said property as RS6 on the official zoning map and other area maps of the city, providing for recordation, providing for severability, providing an effective date, repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, or parts thereof in conflict herewith, directing the city clerk to file a certified copy of the ordinance and map of the area to be annexed with Canyon County, State of Idaho, and the Idaho State Tax Commission pursuant to Idaho Code Section 63-215.
Make a motion to pass the ordinance as read under suspension of rules.
Second.
Excuse me, my mic wasn't on. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Brunner,
Yes.
Bauer,
Yes.
Levi,
Yes.
Machi,
Yes.
and Haverfield.
Yes.
Item 7.2 is an action item. This is the first reading of ordinance for annexation and zoning to RS6 to connect to city utilities at 907 West Greenhurst Road for Jose and Martha Diaz. And it is requested to pass under suspension of rules.
An ordinance of the City of Nampa, Idaho, determining that certain lands commonly known as 907 West Greenhurst Road, Nampa, Idaho, comprising approximately 0.98 acres, more or less, lay contiguous to the limits of the City of Nampa, Canyon County, State of Idaho, and that said land should be annexed into the City of Nampa and be zoned RS6, declaring said lands by proper legal description as described below to be part of the City of Nampa, determining that said annexation and zoning are in the best interest of the public and consistent with the comprehensive plan of the city, directing the city engineer and planning and zoning director to add said property to the official maps of the City of Nampa and to designate said property as RS6 on the official zoning map and other area maps of the city, providing for recordation, providing for severability, providing an effective date, repealing all ordinances, resolutions, orders, or parts thereof in conflict herewith, and directing the city clerk to file a certified copy of the ordinance, a map of the area to be annexed with Canyon County, State of Idaho, and the Idaho State Tax Commission pursuant to Idaho Code Section 63215.
So moved under suspension of rules.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And Mucci.
Jean, we're going to miss you. I'm just sitting here with the fun of who's going to move, and, right, there's always a little banter going back, and this is our last night to get to do this.
I know, I'll miss all of you guys too.
Yeah. Okay, so 7.3 is an action item. This is the first reading of ordinance for zoning map amendment to from community business to residential professional zoning district, a potential development agreement and subdivision preliminary plat for Diamond Peak Townhouse at 7 6th Street North for Jake Woodward, representing Mark Ingstrom and Mountain Star Partners. And it is requested to pass under suspension of rules.
An ordinance of the City of Nampa, Idaho to provide RP zone designation for certain previously BC zone lands located at 7 6th Street North and the abutting right-of-way comprising approximately 1.08 acres, more or less, determining that said zoning is in the best interest of the citizens and consistent with the comprehensive plan of the City of Nampa, Idaho. Zoning said property as RP, providing for recordation, instructing the city engineer to designate said property as RP on the official zoning map and other area maps of the city, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, and repealing all ordinances, rules, and regulations, parts thereof in conflict herewith.
So moved under suspension.
Second.
We're just going to let you keep going since
I'll keep
you only
going.
have 2 more motions left,
Here we go.
right? Any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
Mucci.
Yes.
Item 7.4 is an action item. This is the first reading of ordinance for a zoning map amendment from IPRS to multifamily residential at 335 North Gateway Street. This is for Tim Christovich, Whispering Pines LLC, and it is requested to pass under suspension of rules.
An ordinance of the City of Nampa, Idaho to provide RMH zoning for certain lands commonly known as 335 North Gateway Street, Nampa, Idaho, comprising approximately 1.25 acres, more or less, determining that said zoning is in the best interest of the citizens and consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, rezoning said property from IP/RS to RMH, providing for recordation, instructing the city engineer to designate said property as RMH on the official zoning map and other area maps of the city, subject to the terms of that certain development agreement entered into between the applicant and the City of Nampa, directing the city engineer to alter the use and area map accordingly, providing for an effective date and repealing all ordinances, rules, and regulations and parts thereof in conflict herewith.
So moved under suspension of rules.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And Mucci.
Yes.
Item 7.5 is an action item. This is the first reading of ordinance for zoning map amendment from downtown historic to downtown village in order to build the Old Town Nampa concept plan under the streetscape requirements of the DV zoning district at 1015 3rd Street South, 311 11th Street, 315 11th Street, 323 11th Street, 304 10th Street, and 316 10th Avenue. This is for Muscle Construction, representing himself and Latimer Investments and the International Church of Foursquare Gospel. And it is requested to pass under suspension of rules.
An ordinance of the City of Nampa, Idaho to provide DV zoning designation for certain lands commonly known as 309 11th Avenue South, 1015 3rd Street South, 311 11th Avenue South, 315 11th Avenue South, 323 11th Avenue South, 304 10th Avenue South, and 316 10th Avenue South, Nampa, Idaho, comprising approximately 1.94 acres, more or less, determining that said zoning is in the best interest of the citizens and consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, rezoning said property from DH to DV, providing for recordation and instructing the city engineer to designate said property as DV on the official zoning map and other area maps of the city, subject to the terms of that certain development agreement entered into between the applicant and the city of Nampa, directing the city engineer to alter the use and area map accordingly, providing for an effective date and repealing all ordinances, rules, and regulations and parts thereof in conflict herewith.
So moved under suspension of rules.
Second. Second or last motion.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Bauer?
Yes.
Levi?
Yes.
Haverfield?
Yes.
And Machi?
Yes.
And there is one last motion.
Oh, that's right. She can make that one too.
Would you like to move that we adjourn?
Mayor, I would make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?